Chapter 28:37. Proving herself Empress Xuantian's blood eyes of the illusory night were cold and murderous as they locked onto Nie Tian. In an instant, Nie Tian felt a bone-chilling aura envelop his entire body. It was as if all the blood in his body was about to freeze in an instant. Empress Xiantian exclaimed in surprise, and her expression turned extremely ugly. She was shocked to discover that Nie Tian was not afraid of her blood eyes of the illusory night. Just now, she had cast a powerful eye magic on Nie Tian. However, Nie Tian's mind was clear, and he wasn't affected by the illusion at all. How is this possible? Empress Xiantian cried out in shock. When she had first met Nie Tian, he had been hit by her ocular technique. Why was Nie Tian not reacting to her ocular technique now? This sudden turn of events shocked Empress Xiantian, and she was unable to accept it. Could it be because of that crystal? In the next moment, Empress Xuantian's eyes were attracted to the meteorite stone in Nie Tian's hand. Her heart sank, and she cried out in surprise. It seemed like the meteorite stone was the reason Nie Tian was able to resist her ocular technique. At this moment, Nie Tian also discovered something unusual, and his expression changed slightly. Just a moment ago, he felt a surge of energy in his body. It was as if there was a huge beast sleeping in his body that had suddenly awakened. What's going on? Nie Tian frowned, feeling shocked. The meteorite stone is indeed powerful. It can actually resist the ocular power of the blood eyes of the illusory night. The fat cat's voice was heard as she exclaimed. Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he immediately understood what was going on. It seemed like Empress Xiantian had used an illusion on him, but it had been blocked by the meteorite stone. The surge of energy in his body must have been the energy from the meteorite stone that had entered his body earlier. Off to the side, Patriarch Dark Heaven also sensed what was happening, and his face went stiff with astonishment. He was very familiar with Empress Xuantian's abilities. Her illusory blood eye of the night was only awakened with his help. Even in his current state, he had to be extremely careful when facing Empress Xuantian's blood eyes of the night. However, Nie Tian was actually able to dispel the illusion night eye technique without anyone noticing. It was simply too unbelievable. Patriarch. At that moment, Empress Xuantian's figure flashed to Patriarch Xuantian's side. She bowed slightly in a very respectful manner. Shaolin, why are you here? Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's eyes darkened as he asked coldly. He wasn't in a good state at the moment, and he didn't want anyone to see it. Ancestor, this brat injured Xiao Tang and used despicable means to possess the eldest princess of the Holy Moon dynasty. I personally entered the Xiantian Mystery Land to kill him. Empress Xuantian's face darkened as she stared cold at Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as a look of disdain appeared on his face. Not only was Empress Xuantian's methods insidious, but she was also extremely shameless. She was the one who had used the evil eye technique on Jing Yue, yet she had turned the tables and accused Nie Tian of being despicable. There was really no one else who could be this shameless. Patriarch, I'll attack now and kill this brat. Empress Xuantian's blood-red eyes trembled as she stepped forward, ready to attack. Stand down. However, Ancestor Mysterious Heaven said cold, ordering Empress Xiantian to step back. Empress Xiantian was stunned. When she saw Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's dark expression, she did not dare to say anything else and stepped aside. At that moment, Nie Tian stepped forward and shouted cold at Empress Xiantian, "Let my friends go! Do you think that's possible?" Empress Xiantian sneered with a look of disdain. Nie Tian's eyes darkened as he looked at Ancestor Mysterious Heaven. At this moment, he did not have the ability to save Jing Yue and the others. Only Ancestor Mysterious Heaven could make Empress Xiantian release them. Brat, I don't care what you've done. If you can really do what you said just now, I can promise you anything. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven knew what Nie Tian was thinking and said with a smile. Alright. Nie Tian nodded and stepped forward. He was less than 10 meters away from Ancestor Mysterious Heaven. At this distance, Ancestor Mysterious Heaven could kill Nie Tian with a single thought. Are you ready, Patriarch Profound Heaven? Nie Tian, however, was very calm as he asked with a faint smile. Yes. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven nodded and decided to believe in Nie Tian this once. Since he was about to die anyway, he might as well take a risk. Moreover, Empress Xiantian was just beside him, so Nie Tian would not dare to play any trick. Do it, Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as Fat Cat's voice rang in his mind. Nie Tian nodded vigorously. Then, as a thought entered his mind, he began to activate the heavenly meteor's power. Boom! Immediately, the meteorite stone was activated. Waves of pure energy gushed out and enveloped Ancestor Mysterious Heaven. The profound Heaven Ancestor felt a comfortable aura flow through his body, and his eyes lit up with excitement. After a while, everything returned to normal. However, Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's condition changed slightly. His cloudy eyes brightened, and even his old face looked younger than before. How do you feel, Patriarch Profound Heaven? Nie Tian asked, looking at Patriarch Profound Heaven with a faint smile. Very good. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's lips twitched. He let out a long breath and said, You do have some tricks up your sleeve. It seems that I've underestimated you. He felt that his body's condition had improved and his lifespan had been extended by at least 100 years. He was now certain that Nie Tian was the true owner of the meteorite stone. In fact, Nie Tian had only activated some of the life energy in the meteorite stone to extend Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's life. He had done this to gain Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's trust. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven, now you should believe that I have the ability to help you break through to the Saint Realm, right? Nie Tian said confidently with a smile. I'll believe you this once, said the profound Sky Patriarch solemnly. There was a burning light in his eyes. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven, give me some time. In 10 years at most, I'll come back and help you break through, Nie Tian said with a smile. All right. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven smiled and waved his hand. You can leave now. Nie Tian looked at Ancestor Mysterious Heaven with a frown and an ugly expression. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven was clearly telling him to leave alone and not to let Jing Yue and the others go. Your friends will stay in the Mysterious Heaven Mystery Land with me, Ancestor Mysterious Heaven said with a cold smile. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven, that's not what we agreed on. Nie Tian's face sank. His eyes instantly turned cold as he said, Didn't you just say that you'll promise me anything if I prove my ability? I want to leave with my friends now. Chapter 28:38. How dare you? Nie Tian's face darkened when he heard Patriarch Black Sky's words. His eyes were burning with anger. He hadn't expected a powerhouse like the Dark Heaven Forefather to be so shameless. What he'd just said was like a fart. Patriarch Black Sky, are all the members of the Shao clan so shameless? Your words are louder than farts. Nie Tian was completely enraged. He glared at Patriarch Black Sky and roared cold. Kid, don't go too far. Patriarch Black Sky's face darkened and his eyes flashed with murderous intent. What kind of status did he have? He was a dignified peak expert. How could he accept the insults of a junior? If it wasn't for Nie Tian's abilities, he would have attacked and killed Nie Tian. Nie Tian, the Patriarch told you to leave. Cram. At this time, Empress Xiantian spoke coldly, If you don't leave now, then you'll have a death wish. Shut up. Patriarch Black Sky roared angrily as soon as she finished speaking. He said cold, I'm here. Since when did you have the right to speak? Empress Xuantian's blood-red eyes froze. Her expression became extremely ugly. It was obvious that she was suppressing her anger. However, she didn't dare to show it. She bowed slightly and retreated to the side. Empress Xiantian knew how powerful Patriarch Black Sky was. In the Xiantian Mystery Land, Patriarch Black Sky's combat strength was probably enough to fight against a true sage. Even Empress Xiantian was no match for Patriarch Black Sky. Nietian, leave. Patriarch Black Sky seemed a little impatient. He looked cold at Nietian and said, I won't leave if my friend doesn't come with me, Nietianling replied coldly. Alright, you can stay in the Xiantian Mystery Land and cultivate with me. There's nothing wrong with that, Patriarch Black Sky said with a smile. Forefather Dark Heaven, I can destroy the heavenly meteorite right now. Nietian's eyes darkened. He stretched out his palm and said, If the meteorite stone is gone, I can't help you break through. Ancestor Mysterious Heaven's eyes darkened. Brat, are you threatening me? He asked cold. You're the one who forced me into a life-and-death struggle, Nie Tianling said coldly. His eyes were murderous, as if he would destroy the heavenly meteorite the next moment. The Black Heaven Forefather looked at Nie Tian in silence. He didn't expect Nie Tian to be so resolute. After a moment of pondering, Patriarch Profound Heaven asked coldly, Nie Tian, what if I let your friends go, but you don't come back? Patriarch Profound Heaven, do you think everyone is as shameless as the Shao clan? Nie Tian responded coldly, not missing the sarcasm. The Black Heaven Forefather's expression darkened. He stared at Nie Tian like a hawk, as if he was searching for something. What's your relationship with Nie Fenghua? Patriarch Mysterious Sky suddenly asked after noticing something. My father, Nie Tian replied after a moment of surprise. He didn't expect the Black Heaven Forefather to suddenly mention Nie Fenghua. No wonder your aura is somewhat similar to his. The Black Heaven Forefather said cold. His eyes flickered with unconcealable anger. He then said, Since you're his son, I'm willing to trust you once more. Take your friend and leave. Nie Tian's eyes trembled when he heard the Black Heaven Forefather's words. He was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect Nie Fenghua to be so important to the Black Heaven Forefather. However, when the Black Heaven Forefather mentioned Nie Fenghua, there was a hint of anger in his eyes. It seemed like there was a grudge between the two. Forefather. Empress Xuantian's eyes trembled when she heard the Black Heaven Forefather order Nie Tian and the others to leave. Nie Tian, however, paid no attention to her. With a flash, he flew up into the sky and said to Xiao Tang, Release her. Xiao Tang was stunned and couldn't react for a moment. Let's go. Nie Tianling smiled disdainfully and left. Jing Yuwei and the others were also stunned. They couldn't believe that they could leave just like that. Stop! But at that moment, Empress Xiantian let out a furious roar and moved. Her aura surged out in a frenzy and turned into a boundless pressure that enveloped Nie Tian and the others. Impudent! However, at the same time, the Profound Heaven Ancestor let out a low roar and moved as well. A vast aura was released from his body, and it was extremely powerful. Bang! The next moment, the two terrifying auras collided. The void shook violently as if it was about to explode. Empress Xuantian's body trembled and was forced back 1,000 meters. On the other hand, the Black Heaven Forefather was as steady as a mountain and didn't move at all. It was obvious that his martial arts foundation was much stronger than Empress Xuantian's. Forefather, we can't let them leave. Empress Xiantian steadied herself and shouted. How dare you, Shaolin? How dare you disobey my words? The Dark Heaven Patriarch glared at him coldly. Shaolin wouldn't dare. Empress Xiantian quickly bowed. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat as she explained, Forefather, Nie Tian used despicable means to take possession of the future crown princess of the Xiantian dynasty. If we let him leave, how will the people of the Sacred Soul Realm view the Xiantian dynasty? Is that really the case? The Black Heaven Forefather smiled Shaolin and said in a deep voice, Shaolin, I know very well who you are and what you want to do. But let me tell you, as long as I'm alive, the true master of the Xiantian dynasty will be me, not you. Do you understand? Shaolin, I understand. Empress Xuantian's beautiful eyes trembled. She didn't dare to look at the Black Heaven Forefather. The Black Heaven Forefather's eyes darkened. He said to Nie Tian and the others, "You may leave." "Many thanks, Senior," Nie Tian said with a faint smile. Then, he blurred into action and left. Xiao Lin and Xiao Tang stood rooted to the spot, not daring to move for a long time. Nie Fenghua's son is indeed not simple, the Black Heaven Forefather said to himself as he watched Nie Tian and the others leave. At the same time, Nie Tian and the others returned the way they came and quickly left the Xiantian Arcana. They didn't waste any time and left the palace and Xiantian Imperial City. With the Black Heaven Forefather's orders, no one stopped them on their way. High up in the sky, Nie Tian and the others sat on the golden leopardi. Their tense expressions relaxed when they saw the Xiantian Imperial City getting further and further away from them. This trip to the Xiantian Arcana had gone very smoothly. It was a little out of Nie Tian's expectations. At that moment, Jingrui looked at Nie Tian and asked nervously, "Brother Nie, you've got the heavenly meteor, haven't you?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded. He flipped his palm and a white crystal appeared in his palm. It was the meteorite. "Wonderful!" Jingrui's eyes trembled violently as he exclaimed in joy. He looked at Jing Yue, who was equally happy. With the meteorite they could save their mother. Of course they were happy. Chapter 2839. So ferocious, huh? Jing Rui could not help but look at Ji Cho Wu, his gaze narrowing and his expression clearly displeased. "Miss Ji, what are you laughing at?" Jing Yue's expression darkened as she asked with a frown. "Eldest princess, second prince, don't be too happy just yet." Ji Cho Wu sneered once more, his gaze weird. "What do you mean?" Jing Yue and Jing Rui stared blankly at the same time, their expressions darkening. Nie Tian was taken aback as well, unsure why Ji Cho Wu would suddenly say that. "Take a look at this and you will understand." Ji Cho Wu's gaze darkened as a jade plate appeared in his hand, which he handed to Jing Yue and Jing Rui. Jing Yue and Jing Rui took the jade plate and began to sense it with their divine senses. How could this be? Their expressions darkened after a moment, their expressions becoming very ugly. What happened? Nie Tian was taken aback for a moment before he asked in surprise. It seemed that there was some information in the jade plate that caused Jing Yue and Jing Rui's expressions to become so ugly. "Brother Nie, so the one who could save my mother is you." Jing Rui's expression improved a little after a long time, and he spoke somberly. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian asked in a low voice, "What do you know, Your Highness?" Jing Rui's gaze was slightly trembling as he said, "Master Hua had left some information in the jade plate, telling us something. He said that you are the true master of the heavenly meteorite, but your ability is too weak at the moment and is not enough to activate the power of the heavenly meteorite. That is why our mother's curse cannot be broken for the time being. You must wait until your ability reaches the pinnacle of demi-saint or a pseudo-saint before you can break the curse and awaken our mother." "Well..." Nie Tian's gaze froze as he listened to Jing Rui's words, his expression becoming very ugly. He certainly knew that the Master Hua Jing Rui spoke of was Huairu. "Nie Tian, Master Hua had us search for the heavenly meteorite for you, right?" Jing Yue's beautiful eyes were trembling as she looked at Nie Tian and asked. With her intelligence, how could she not have guessed everything when she thought about it? Nie Tian thought for a moment and nodded without denying it. "Your Royal Highness, Nie Tian didn't know about it before. Everything was planned by my teacher." Ji Cho Wu's gaze darkened and he suddenly said, "If you feel that you have been used, then blame teacher. It has nothing to do with Nie Tian." Jing Yue smiled and said, "Since things have come to this point, we can't blame anyone. Along the way, we all saw what Nie Tian did. Even if we're being used by Master Hua, we'll admit it. Moreover, even if we knew the truth in advance, I'm afraid we would still go looking for the meteorite stone." At this point, she looked at Nie Tian. Her beautiful eyes flickered as she asked, "Nie Tian, you will definitely save our mother, right?" "Yes." Nie Tian nodded heavily and said, "Yue, believe me. If I have the strength, no matter what price I have to pay, I will save your mother." "Thank you." Jing Yue and Jing Rui nodded at the same time and thanked Nie Tian. But at this time, Ji Cho Wu looked at Nie Tian strangely and said in his heart, "Nie Tian, if you make a promise now, I'm afraid you'll regret it in the future. Their mother's identity is not simple. If you knew the true identity of their mother, I'm afraid you wouldn't have saved her." Ji Cho Wu did not say these words out loud, and only sighed in his heart. Nie Tian sensed that Ji Cho Wu's gaze was strange, and couldn't help but look at the latter, but the latter turned his head and avoided it. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't care. Next, everyone immediately returned to the Holy Moon Empire. This time, the marriage between the two empires ended in such a way, which no one could have imagined. Jing Yue and Jing Rui's expressions were not good. They had to think about how to explain it to the emperor after returning to the empire. 10 days later, everyone finally returned to the Holy Moon Empire. Nie Tian and Jing Yue said their goodbyes and did not follow them to the imperial city. Jing Yue was worried about the safety of Nie Tian and the others, so she specially arranged for a hidden guard to protect them in secret. 1 day later, Nie Tian and the others returned to the Holy Soul Academy. After this mission, everyone's attitude towards Nie Tian had completely changed. Even Lu Fengming, Fang Yan, and the others were respectful towards Nie Tian. Returning to the academy, Nie Tian brought everyone and prepared to go to the outer court hall to submit the mission. However, just as they arrived at the outer court square, they saw a figure standing in the sky above the square, surging with a surging aura. The aura all over his body was incomparably fierce and cold. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. His expression could not help but change. The corners of his mouth twitched and he asked, "Who is this?" "It's him." Ji Cho Wu suddenly raised his head and looked at the figure in the sky. His cold eyes could not help but sink. "Ho Qing." When the others saw this warrior, they also spoke one after another, their expressions very surprised. "Ji Cho Wu, you're back." Just then, the cultivator spoke. His tightly shut eyes snapped open, revealing not his eyeballs, but his pitch-black eye socket. This guy was actually blind. It seemed like he was waiting for Ji Cho Wu to return. "Ji Cho Wu, do you know this guy?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, then asked with a frown. "Of course I know him." Ji Cho Wu sneered and said, "He's just a defeated opponent of mine back then." "Defeated opponent?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, his expression darkening slightly, and then he understood. This blind man called Ho Qing was waiting here for Ji Cho Wu, obviously to challenge the latter. Ji Cho Wu was right, Ho Qing was indeed defeated by her. Moreover, Ho Qing entered the Holy Soul Academy in the same batch as her. Back then, the two of them were considered to be the most talented warriors in the outer court. But Ho Qing was very competitive and wholeheartedly wanted to be the number one person in the outer court. Hence, he arranged a battle with Ji Cho Wu. But the result of that battle was his crushing defeat. Even his Yuan meridians were crippled by Ji Cho Wu. Later on, this guy disappeared without a trace. Everyone thought that he was expelled from the academy. Who could have thought that Ho Qing actually appeared once again? What made people most shocked was that Ho Qing actually became a blind person. What happened to this guy's eyes? Could it be destroyed by someone? Lu Fengming's brows furrowed, and she could not resist asking. "My eyes were destroyed by myself." When Ho Qing heard Lu Fengming's words, he smiled cold and said, "I cultivate the bloodthirsty blind sword. Eyes are just a burden to me. Sometimes, only without eyes can I see more clearly." This. Everyone's faces froze, sucking in a cold breath in unison. Who could have thought that in order to cultivate a purer sword technique, Ho Qing would actually be so ruthless and personally destroy his own eyes? Ji Cho Wu, You've been the #1 person in the outer court for so long, it's time to return it now. The next instant, Ho Qing opened his mouth again. A pair of pitch-black eye sockets were like an abyss, staring at Ji Cho Wu. Chapter 2840. Chapter 2835. Chapter 2835. Glory and humiliation. At this moment, many people had gathered in the public square. The crowd's gazes were all focused on Ho Qing as they discussed. This guy, he disappeared for so many years. Why did he suddenly appear? Back then, his meridians were all destroyed by Ji Cho Wu, yet he could still recover. How impressive! Ho Qing was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Ji Cho Wu back then. This time, his strength must have increased greatly. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to provoke Ji Cho Wu so openly. As the crowd discussed, many people looked towards Ji Cho Wu, not knowing how the latter would respond. Ho Qing, you are merely someone who lost to me. What right do you have to challenge me? Ji Cho Wu smiled coldly, his eyes were cold. Based on this, Ho Qing coldly smiled. Then, his body shook. Instantly, a terrifying sword aura soared into the sky, rolling and sharp as if it wanted to tear the void apart. What a strong sword will! When everyone saw this, their expressions changed as they exclaimed. Who would have thought that Ho Qing, whose meridians were all destroyed, could actually release such a terrifying sword will? The legendary realm of sword and martial arts as one. Nie Tian frowned, his expression changed as he exclaimed in his heart. This Ho Qing, although he was blind, had trained to the legendary realm of sword and martial arts as one. He was truly powerful. It seemed like there was a reason why he was so ruthless towards himself. Perhaps the sword technique he cultivated could only trigger an even more terrifying sword will after losing his eyes. Ho Qing, so your sword realm is so high. No wonder you dare to challenge me. Ji Cho Wu smiled cold, his eyes were still filled with disdain. To her, even if Ho Qing became a swordsman of the legendary realm of sword and martial arts as one, it was impossible for him to be her opponent. Since she could defeat Ho Qing once, she could defeat him again. Ji Cho Wu, less bulsh *t. Come up and fight me. Ho Qing smiled cold and roared in a low voice, extremely domineering. The crowd looked at Ho Qing, feeling the sword will from the latter, their eyes trembled slightly. It seemed like this time, Ho Qing came prepared. He swore to avenge the humiliation of being crippled by Ji Cho Wu. You don't deserve to fight her. At this moment, a low voice rang out as a silhouette soared up into the skies. Releasing his aura in a frenzy, he dashed straight towards Ho Qing. Ji Chen. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he saw the figure clearly. It was none other than Ji Chen. Fool! A mere second-rank half-saint actually dared to attack me? You're courting death. Ho Qing roared in a low voice. His body trembled as a blood-red sword qi gushed out like a rainbow, sharp to the extreme. Bang! In the next moment, before anyone could see what had happened, a muffled sound rang out in the air. Ji Chen's figure was sent flying, smashing heavily into the ground. Ji Chen. Ji Cho Wu's eyes trembled when he saw this scene. His figure flashed and he flew out to catch Ji Chen. At this moment, Ji Chen's chest had been pierced by the sword will, and blood was gushing out. Ho Qing's current strength was indeed incomparable to before. He didn't even need to draw his sword. Just his sword intent was enough to heavily injure Ji Chen. Trash! Ho Qing coldly laughed, incomparably arrogant. Ji Chen, how are you? Ji Cho Wu landed and saw that Ji Chen's face was deathly pale. He was extremely nervous. None of your business. Ji Chen directly broke free from Ji Cho Wu's grasp as he spoke coldly. Nie Tian frowned and stepped forward, releasing the power of the earth vein's origin to help Ji Chen stabilize his aura. At this moment, he felt strange. Why was Ji Cho Wu so nervous when Ji Chen was injured? Could it be that the two of them had some sort of relationship? Ho Qing, if you dare to injure him, I will take your life. At this moment, Ji Cho Wu could no longer endure it. He roared and soared up into the skies, releasing his aura in an incomparably violent manner. Humph, humph. Ho Qing laughed coldly. What? Seeing your little brother injured, as the elder sister, you finally couldn't endure it anymore? Little brother? Hearing Ho Qing's words, Nie Tian couldn't help but be shocked. So it turned out that Ji Cho Wu and Ji Qin were siblings. But this pair of siblings was very abnormal. The two of them rarely spoke, and were very cold when they met each other. No one knew what happened between the two of them. Why did it turn out like this? Ho Qing, you are courting death. Ji Cho Wu stood coldly in the air, his eyes incomparably cold, as he said solemnly. As her voice fell, a terrifying sword intent instantly gushed out of her body, condensing into a huge sword silhouette outside her body. It was incomparably sharp, as if it wanted to split apart the blue dome of heaven. When the crowd saw this scene, their eyes trembled, their faces revealing unconcealable anticipation. Ho Qing suddenly appeared after disappearing for many years. Her strength was no longer the same as before, extremely domineering. Ji Cho Wu had sat at the #1 position of the outer sect for several decades. This time, meeting an old opponent again, he would obviously give it his all. The following battle would definitely be very exciting. Boom! The next moment, Ho Qing stepped out, sword intent gushing out of her body. Back then, he was beaten by Ji Cho Wu until his yuan meridians were all crippled. At this moment, the resentment and anger that he had suppressed in his heart for several decades was completely released, transforming into a powerful sword intent that surged in the void. Bang! After that, the void shook violently. The two sword intents clashed against each other, like a thunderous explosion. Ji Cho Wu and Ho Qing both retreated a few steps at the same time before stabilizing themselves at the same time. Ho Qing, you have indeed grown a lot. But with just this kind of strength, it is still not enough to defeat me. Ji Cho Wu coldly laughed. The sword intent around her body once again erupted, transforming into rays of purple light that circulated around her body. Like purple flames, they burned in the void. In her hand, a violet flame crescent sword appeared. Evidently, she was going to fight with all her might. Shameless boasting. Ho Qing cold smiled. A crimson long sword appeared in her hand. The color of the sword was as dazzling as fresh blood. Even on the body of the sword, a wave of qi surged, as if it was flowing with fresh blood. The following battle, to Ho Qing, was not only for the glory of being the #1 in the outer sect, but also for the humiliation she suffered back then. Ji Cho Wu, after this battle, you will no longer be the #1 in the outer sect. I, Ho Qing, will beat you into a piece of trash. Ho Qing stood with her sword in front of her. She roared, and after that, her silhouette moved. Like a red ray of light, she rushed towards Ji Cho Wu. Rumble! In the void, the shadow of the crimson sword whistled. Instantly, the crimson sword light soared into the sky. Even the heaven and earth were dyed red. The moment the sword intent pervaded the air, the stench of blood filled the air. Ji Cho Wu froze for a moment. His cold eyes narrowed as he attacked with the violet flame crescent sword. The violet sword intent was like a burning flame, condensing into a purple moon in the air that descended. So powerful! The crowd's gaze trembled as they exclaimed in shock. Ji Cho Wu and Ho Qing were both very powerful. The first exchange was already an all-out attack. Seems like this battle was even more fascinating than what the crowd had imagined. Rumble! Rumble! High up in the air, a shadow of a sword and a shadow of a moon appeared. One was as red as blood, the other was as purple as fire. Chapter 2841. Bloodthirsty enchantment *, rumble rumble rumble, * in the void, the sword intent waves continued to clash. Ji Cho Wu and Ho Qing's silhouettes were engulfed by the sword waves and could no longer be seen. But high up in the sky, one could see the scene of swords clashing. The crowd stared at the sky, their eyes trembling. They were so nervous that they did not dare to blink, fearing that they would miss any interesting scene. Bang. At this moment, another huge collision occurred. Then, two silhouettes retreated and appeared in the crowd's sight. It was Ji Cho Wu and Ho Qing. At this moment, the two of them were surging with sword intent. It was as if two huge swords were standing in the void, sharp and murderous. The two of them clashed over 10 times, yet they were equally matched. These two fellas are indeed very strong. The crowd exclaimed in their hearts, feeling shocked. Ji Cho Wu's strength was known by everyone in the outer yard. On the other hand, Ho Qing, after returning in such a domineering manner, was also this strong. This was surprising. These two are both 9th-rank half-sages. Their swordsmanship is also at the legendary realm of sword and martial arts as one. They are indeed evenly matched. Nie Tian looked at the two people in the sky and thought to himself. But at this moment, he faintly felt something strange. It was as if the sword intent circulating around Ho Qing's body was slowly changing. It was extremely strange. Purple flame, lunar soul kill. At this moment, Ji Cho Wu's silhouette moved. With a shout, she turned into a ray of purple light, as if her body and the purple flame lunar soul sword had fused into one. A purple flame sword shadow attacked Ho Qing. Good timing. Facing Ji Cho Wu's sword attack, Ho Qing was not afraid at all. Instead, he smiled coldly. Then, his body trembled and a strange scene happened. The blood-colored sword intent around him suddenly exploded, instantly forming a huge blood-colored sword screen. Instantly, the aura between heaven and earth changed. The surrounding space turned dark red, completely filled with bloodthirsty sword intent. What's going on? At this moment, everyone felt their chest tighten, as if they were about to suffocate. In a flash, Nie Tian came to a realization, and his eyes flickered. A ward of sword intent. Who would have thought that Ho Qing would actually suddenly activate the sword intent barrier? Oh no! Immediately, Nie Tian's heart sank, and his expression became ugly. And at this time, Ji Cho Wu's figure had already rushed over. The purple flame lunar soul sword shadow was like a sea of purple flames that filled the sky, surging over. However, the sea of purple flames was not as large as the blood-colored sword screen, and was completely engulfed by it. Ji Cho's 5 bodies were trapped in the barrier. Feeling the bloody sword intent aura around him, his cold eyes couldn't help but tremble. He was incomparably shocked. Ji Cho Wu, come into my bloodthirsty enchantment. You will lose for sure. Ho Qing smiled cold. His figure moved and actually merged with the bloodthirsty enchantment, directly disappearing. This. Ji Cho Wu sucked in a breath of cold air. Then, she discovered in shock that within the bloodthirsty barrier, her sword intent was actually suppressed. Ji Cho Wu, the bloodthirsty barrier that I have painstakingly cultivated for dozens of years is specially prepared for you. At this moment, Ho Qing's voice rang out once more, resounding through the air with an incomparably sinister aura. Back then, you defeated me and crippled my Yuan meridians. This enmity I will never forget. Today, it is time for you to pay your debt of blood with blood. Swoosh. Then, in the instant his voice landed, a blood-colored sharp light flashed through the air. Before Ji Cho Wu could react, it directly landed, leaving a deep bloody wound on her body. So fast. When everyone saw this scene, their expressions suddenly changed, their eyes were filled with shock. No one expected that this battle would actually welcome such a tragic change in an instant. Ji Cho Wu had already become a beast in a cage, completely losing the ability to retaliate. He could only wait for Ho Qing to slowly torture and kill him. Bastard! Ji Chen saw the tragic scene in the air from below and growled. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was enraged like a wild beast. But right now, he was extremely heavily injured and couldn't attack at all. And with his strength, he was completely not Ho Qing's opponent. Nie Tian frowned, his face was livid, but he didn't attack. Ji Cho Wu, I will slowly torture you, make you submit bit by bit, make you despair bit by bit. In the blood-red sword screen, Ho Ching's voice rang out once more, incomparably sinister. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. And just as his voice landed, several blood-colored sword rays flashed by. Several bloody wounds appeared on Ji Cho Wu's body, and her entire person was already dripping with blood. At this rate, she would soon die from excessive blood loss. Ho Ching was too cruel. He was satisfied with defeating Ji Cho Wu, and still wanted to torture her like this. Ji Cho Wu, I will give you a chance right now. As long as you kneel and beg for mercy, I can let you go. How about it? At this time, Ho Ching spoke again, incomparably sinister. Dream on. Ji Cho Wu growled, a pair of cold eyes suffused with a cold light. Even if she lost, even if she died, she would not kneel to Ho Ching. Not kneeling? Ho Ching sneered and suddenly said, Fine, then let me take off your mask and see what you really look like. No. Ji Cho Wu's eyes trembled and he suddenly screamed. Huge panic actually appeared in his eyes. The gazes of the crowd suddenly trembled, and actually revealed scorching heat, very much looking forward to it. In the outer court, the face under Ji Cho Wu's mask had always been a mystery. Everyone wanted to see what the number one female in the outer court looked like. If you don't want it, then I want it. Ho Ching sneered, incomparably insolent. Enough! Just at this time, a voice suddenly rang out, and then a silhouette rushed into the sky. The sword and tent around him rumbled, shaking up the void. Everyone's eyes trembled again, and one after another, they all looked towards the silhouette that suddenly rushed out. This silhouette was none other than Ye Tian. Ho Ching exclaimed, and then his silhouette appeared within the bloodthirsty barrier. The corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile, and he said, A peak god realm trash, you are courting death. Boom! As the sound of his voice faded, within the bloodthirsty barrier, a bloody light whizzed out, like the wind and lightning, sharp and murderous, attacking Nye Tian. Bang! Nye Tian's reaction was extremely fast. He slashed out with his sword, and the sword's shadow blocked the bloody light. Huh! Ho Ching exclaimed again, and then his face stiffened. He didn't think that a peak god realm warrior could actually block his sword. Ji Cho Wu has already lost. The title of number one in the outer court is yours. Let's end it here. Nye Tian steadied himself and said coldly. Humph, ha ha ha. Ho Ching was stunned at first, and then as if he heard the funniest joke in the world, he immediately laughed maniacally and said insolently, Stinking brat, who do you think you are? With just you, you don't even have the right to stand in front of me. Boom! Before his roar ended, a terrifying bloody light appeared, and actually condensed into a bloody claw in the air, grabbing towards Nye Tian. This time, Ho Ching was infuriated, and he directly wanted to kill Nye Tian. Chapter 2842. I just looked down on you. Boom! In an instant, the sword aura around Nye Tian was suddenly released. It was like a huge flaming dragon. Outside his body, a huge sword shadow appeared. It was as majestic as a mountain, incomparably vast. What a terrifying sword aura! When the crowd below saw this scene, their eyes trembled violently, and they couldn't help but exclaim. The instant Nye Tian's sword aura bloomed, the crowd actually felt the suffocating pressure in their hearts being released. What was unbelievable was that Nye Tian was only at the peak of the god state. If they did not see it with their own eyes, no one would believe that a martial artist at the peak of the god state could release such a terrifying sword momentum. Bang! In the next moment, the crimson light descended, but it was actually shattered by the sword shadows around Nye Tian's body. How is this possible? The sudden scene caused Ho Ching's eyes to tremble, and he exclaimed in shock. Just now, when Nye Tian blocked his sword, it made him pay more attention to Nye Tian. However, he obviously did not regard Nye Tian as a real opponent. A piece of trash at the God Realm peak stage was indeed not qualified for him to take seriously. But at this moment, he knew that Nie Tian was a powerhouse that could fight against him. However, it was a pity that it was too late to realize it now. Break! At this moment, Nie Tian's eyes flashed with coldness as he roared in a low voice. After which, his silhouette flickered as the gigantic sword silhouette moved. It was as though a towering mountain was collapsing as it smashed towards the bloodlust barrier. Boom! Pung pung pung! The sword shadows descended, shaking the heavens and earth. Following which, amidst a series of rumbling sounds, the bloodthirsty barrier suddenly collapsed. Bang! Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Ho Qing's figure was directly sent flying. Dream! This! Everyone's eyes trembled again as they gasped in unison. They were completely shocked by the scene in front of them. One sword, with just one sword, Nie Tian directly shattered Ho Qing's bloodthirsty barrier. Was this guy really just a martial artist at the peak of the god state? If he could defeat a stage 9 half-saint when he was at the peak of the godly state, then wouldn't he be able to fight a real saint when he became a stage 9 pseudo-saint? Everyone was shocked to the extreme. Nie Tian's attack had directly subverted their understanding of martial arts. So the strongest person in the Holy Soul Outer Institute was not Ji Cho Wu, nor was it Ho Qing, but Nie Tian. However, these people had only seen the surface. They had no idea what kind of power Nie Tian had used in that attack. When he saw Ji Cho Wu being humiliated, he did not make a move immediately because he was accumulating strength. With this strike, not only did Nie Tian allow Lulu to once again activate the Holy Soul Curse Seal in his body, he also used the Heavenly Meteorite Stone to activate the power of the stars, pushing his martial body to its limit. He even had sword qi rampaging through his body, igniting his blood and qi to stimulate the power of the fiend god. Nie Tian was only able to unleash such a shocking sword attack with the help of several different types of powers. Even though it was just one sword attack, it already depleted virtually all of the power within Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian's figure moved, arriving beside Ji Cho Wu, stabilizing the latter, and asked, "Ji Cho Wu, are you alright?" "I'm fine," Ji Cho Wu replied. A trace of warmth clearly surged in his pair of cold eyes. She did not think that Nie Tian would actually force his martial body to its limits for her, erupting with a terrifying sword attack. "Stinking brat, who are you?" And right at this time, Ho Qing's voice sounded out, carrying terrifying fury, incomparably violent. His bloodthirsty barrier was broken apart by Nie Tian's sword attack. He was also severely injured, his complexion incomparably pale. A pair of pitch-black eye sockets seemed like they were about to explode directly. "I'm called Nie Tian." Nie Tian responded coolly, but it appeared even more provocative. Nie Tian. Hearing this name, Ho Qing's expression changed abruptly, and he said in shock, "You're Nie Fenghua's son? So what if I am?" Nie Tianling laughed, and at the same time, his gaze swept across the crowd below. In Saint Soul Academy, not just the outer court, inner court, core court, and even the people on the Hidden Dragon list all knew that Nie Tian was Nie Fenghua's son. But there were not many people who had truly seen Nie Tian in action. At this moment, when everyone saw how powerful Nie Tian was, their expressions became even more shocked. How can the traitor Nie Fenghua's son be so strong? His father is known as the #1 genius of Saint Soul Academy in a million years. His talent seems to be even more terrifying than his father. Terrifying? I think he cultivates some kind of evil technique. Otherwise, it's impossible for a peak deity realm martial artist to defeat a stage 9 half-sage. That's right. This kid definitely cultivates evil technique. There's an evil chi on his body. I've long sensed it. The crowd discussed, and in the end, they actually thought that Nie Tian cultivated evil technique. However, Nie Tian didn't pay any attention to what they were saying. He couldn't be bothered to bicker with a bunch of idiots. Nie Tian, I, Ho Qing, will remember your name. At this time, Ho Qing spoke and said coldly, 3 months later, we'll meet on the life and death platform. Life and death platform. When the crowd heard Ho Ching suddenly say these 3 words, their eyes trembled, and they exclaimed. In Saint Soul Academy, private fights were forbidden between disciples, but normal challenges were allowed. If there was a conflict between 2 people that couldn't be resolved, then they could go to the life and death platform. The so-called life and death platform was a place for life and death duels. No one thought that Ho Ching would actually propose a life and death challenge to Nie Tian. Nie Tian don't agree to him. Ji Chuwu was stunned for a moment, then looked at Nie Tian and said nervously, Ji Chuwu, you've already lost to me. You don't have the qualifications to speak. Without waiting for Nie Tian to reply, Ho Ching spoke again and said coldly, The battle between me and Nie Tian is for the fight for the outer sex number 1. This glory belongs to me, I must obtain it. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, and his brows slightly furrowed. This Ho Ching was really stubborn to be the outer sex number 1. Not only did he not hesitate to destroy his own eyes, he even wanted to bet his life at this moment. There's no need to fight. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, I'm not your opponent. The outer sex number 1 is yours. What outer sex number 1? What glory? Nie Tian didn't care at all. If Ho Ching wanted it, he could just give it to him. His next goal was much bigger than whatever outer sex number 1. To fight for the outer sex number 1 with a person who was practically an idiot, that was really idiotic. What's going on? When the crowd heard Nie Tian's words, they were stunned, and their expressions were lifeless, suspecting if they heard wrongly. To the entire outer sect, the outer sex number 1 was a great glory. But Nie Tian didn't care at all and casually admitted defeat, handing over the title of the outer sex number 1 with both hands. Nie Tian, are you looking down on me? Ho Ching was stunned at first, then he roared in anger like a wild beast, about to go berserk. Nie Tian directly admitted defeat and gave him the outer sex number 1, but it made him feel that Nie Tian was looking down on him and didn't want to fight with him. Yes, I am looking down on you. Nie Tian's gaze slightly froze and he faintly smiled, not avoiding the topic at all. You! Ho Ching's expression froze, and he felt his chest suddenly sink, as if a giant rock was pressing down on him, making him unable to breathe. Chapter 2843. Stellar Origin Formation. Everyone looked at Ho Ching. Even tens of thousands of meters away, they could feel the anger around the ladder. Ho Ching was surrounded by blood qi, extremely fierce, like a wild beast shrouded in a blood curtain, about to go berserk at any time. But Nie Tian's expression was incomparably calm. With an indifferent expression, he said in a loud voice, Ho Ching, none of your actions are worthy of my respect. You are narrow-minded, short-sighted, cruel, and bloodthirsty. For the mere title of number 1 in the outer sect, you even destroyed your own eyes. You already defeated Ji Chuwu just now, but you still want to abuse him like this. It is precisely because of this that the things you see will forever only be these in front of you. The world of martial arts is vast and boundless. Martial artists go against the heavens, surpassing themselves, and even more so, going against heaven and earth. But you only care about empty reputation, not seeking to advance in martial arts. This is simply a waste of your talent. If you want to be number 1 in the outer sect, then I'll give it to you. Anyway, in my eyes this is worthless. Finished speaking, Nie Tianling looked coldly at Ho Ching. His words were not only said to Ho Ching, but also to the others present. He originally did not want to say so much, but this Ho Ching was too obsessed, so he could not help it. Nie Tian, you! Ho Ching's entire body trembled, opening his mouth and actually roaring in anger. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to lecture me? Nie Tian frowned, his expression was gloomy, and he said cold, Good words are unpleasant to the ear. If you don't want to listen, then forget it. Saying so, he turned around and left with Ji Chuwu. Since he could not persuade Ho Ching, then forget it, it was not worth wasting time. Nye Tian, 3 months later, see you on the life and death platform. Ho Qing opened his mouth again, saying cold. But Nye Tian did not care about him at all, his figure directly descending. Ho Qing also did not say anything more, his figure moving, directly leaving. 3 months later, if Nye Tian was not willing to fight, he would force Nye Tian to fight. He was determined to get the first place in the outer sect, and no one could stop him. Nye Tian, Ji Cho Wu and the rest left the plaza and entered the outer court hall. Nye Tian. As soon as they entered the hall, Bai Ruozhu walked out. She looked at Nye Tian with a strange expression, as if she had just been shocked. Teacher Bai, did you see everything just now? Nye Tian looked at Bai Ruozhu and smiled faintly. It was obvious that Bai Ruozhu had seen everything that had happened in the plaza just now. She just didn't stop it. In a battle between the Academy's disciples, if it wasn't a life-threatening situation, the Academy's teachers wouldn't intervene. Bai Ruozhu hadn't expected that in just a short month Nye Tian's battle prowess had actually reached such a terrifying level. Even such a powerful swordsman like Ho Qing was defeated by his sword. It was simply unimaginable. Yes. Bai Ruozhu nodded slightly and asked, the life and death battle 3 months from now, will you go? No. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said directly, it seems that you really have no interest in being the first place in the outer sect. Bai Ruozhu laughed and said, but Ho Qing is a difficult person to deal with. I'm afraid that if you don't accept the battle, he will endlessly pester you. Nye Tian laughed and said indifferently, 3 months from now, if Ho Qing endlessly pesters me, the one who will suffer will be him. Bai Ruozhu was stunned for a moment. Then, seeing Nye Tian's eyes, she couldn't help but tremble. She had a faint premonition that 3 months later, Nye Tian's battle prowess would have a qualitative improvement. Next, Nye Tian handed in the task, received his points and left directly. After leaving the outer court hall, Nye Tian separated from the others. Accompanied by Zhu Shan and Zhu He, he came to the Ice-Fire Valley. Nye Tian. Just as he entered the Ice-Fire Valley, there was already a person waiting for him. It was Huairu. Elder Hua. Seeing Huairu, Nye Tian smiled faintly and called out, it seems that you have already obtained the meteorite stone. Huairu looked at Nye Tian and said with a faint smile. Nye Tian nodded and directly took out the meteorite stone and handed it to Huairu. Nye Tian, come with me. But Huairu didn't take it. Instead, he smiled and directly walked into the valley. Nye Tian followed behind Huairu, not knowing what the latter was up to. After a moment, Nye Tian arrived at the Ice-Fire Lake. The scene that greeted his eyes made him completely stunned. At this moment, the Ice-Fire Lake had changed greatly. Extremely strong divine power circulated in the space, and a series of formation patterns surged, filling the entire heaven and earth. This is... Nye Tian was stunned for a moment before he reacted and looked at Huairu in shock. Nye Tian, this is the star origin formation that I have carefully prepared for you. Huairu smiled faintly and said, don't you feel that the formation in front of you is very familiar? Nye Tian frowned, then his eyes trembled as he reacted. The formation that Huairu had set up was extremely similar to the meteorite formation that he had seen in the mysterious sky mystery land. Both were built with the power of the stars as the prototype of the formation. Elder Hua, what is this star origin formation used for? Nye Tian took a deep breath to calm himself down and asked with a frown. Huairu must have consumed a large number of divine materials to set up such a large formation. It must be of great use. Nye Tian, you should already know my identity. Huairu smiled faintly and suddenly looked at Nye Tian with a strange expression. Yes. Nye Tian nodded and said, you are the star emissary. Yes. Huairu nodded and said with a smile, I am the third star emissary. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly and the corner of his mouth twitched. He had already guessed that Huairu was the star emissary, but he was still a little surprised to hear Huairu admit it. "Nye Tian, I built the star origin formation for you to integrate with the meteorite stone." Huairu smiled faintly and looked at Nye Tian. Integrate with the meteorite stone? Nye Tian couldn't help but be surprised when he heard Huairu's words. He didn't expect that the star origin formation in front of him was used to integrate with the meteorite stone. In fact, until now, he still didn't know what the meteorite stone was and how it was related to the star origin stone. "Nye Tian, I can feel that the star origin stone in your body has been unsealed. You should already know about the star mark dark seal, right?" Huairu saw Nye Tian's doubts and asked with a faint smile. Nye Tian nodded, then his eyes trembled and he said in surprise, "Elder Hua, don't tell me you want me to integrate with the star origin stone in order to break the star mark dark seal?" When he obtained the meteorite stone, Nye Tian guessed that the meteorite stone's function was to break the star mark dark seal. At this time, Huairu wanted him to integrate with the meteorite stone in order to break the star mark dark seal. "Yes." Huairu nodded and said with a smile, "Although you have awakened the power of 900 billion stars, you can't exert the power of the stars because of the existence of the star mark dark seal." Chapter 2844. Star mark seal breaking. Nye Tian looked at Huairu with a fiery gaze, his heart filled with anticipation. What he desired the most at the moment was to increase his strength. If he could completely activate the power of the stars, his strength would increase unimaginably. "Humph." Huairu looked at Nye Tian and laughed strangely. "Nye Tian, you underestimate the star mark seal. If you break all the star mark seals now, I'm afraid your martial body won't be able to withstand the power of the stars." "What do you mean?" Nye Tian was stunned and looked at Huairu with a puzzled expression. Huairu laughed again and said, "Every strand of the power of the stars is imprisoned by the 9 star mark seals. The 9 star mark seals have layers of imprisonment in order to suppress the power of the stars. The previous star sacred lord had already found a way to break the seal on the first 3 star mark seals before he died." At this point, Huairu suddenly looked at Nye Tian and asked with a strange smile, "Nye Tian, do you know how powerful the star sacred lord was in the all-heaven sacred world after breaking the seal on the first 3 star mark seals? Is he a mid-level saint?" Nye Tian was stunned for a moment. Then, his eyes trembled as he guessed. There were a total of 9 star mark seals. The previous star sacred lord had only broken the seal on 3, so his strength shouldn't be too great. Therefore, Nye Tian guessed that his strength was in the mid-level of the saint realm. "No." Huairu looked at Nye Tian and shook his head with a strange expression. "No?" Nye Tian was stunned again. He frowned and said, "Could it be that the previous star sacred lord was only a low-level saint?" Huairu laughed again and said, "Nye Tian, you underestimate the power of the stars. The previous star sacred lord was already an expert who stood at the peak of the all-heaven sacred world. In the all-heaven sacred world, the number of experts who have the strength to fight against the star sacred lord can be counted on one hand." This. Upon hearing Huairu's words, Nye Tian's expression suddenly changed, and he froze on the spot. He did not expect the former star saint to be so powerful. One had to know that the previous star saint had only unsealed 3 of the star mark dark seals. It was hard to imagine how powerful the star saint would be if all 9 star marks were unsealed. An expert of that level could probably destroy a world with a wave of his hand. "Nye Tian, I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand that the astral origin stone is far more powerful than you can imagine." Huairu smiled and said, "I believe that you can surpass the previous star sacred leader and rebuild the star sacred realm." Nye Tian smiled faintly and said nothing. "Nye Tian, according to the information left by the former star saint lord, the meteorite stone is the thing that can break the first star trace seal." Then, Huairu said, "All these years, I've searched the myriad realms just to find the heavenly meteorite stone. Heaven rewards those who persevere. I've finally found the heavenly meteorite stone in the Sacred Soul region. Since then, I've been staying in the Sacred Soul region, waiting for the future star Saint Lord to appear. Nietion's eyes narrowed slightly, and he could not help but glance at Huairu, admiring the latter's perseverance. Next, Nietion no longer hesitated and entered the stellar origin formation under Huairu's guidance. The mountain and river brothers stood guard outside the ice-fire valley, not allowing anyone to enter. Nietion, based on your current strength, it will take you about half a month to merge with the heavenly meteorite stone. Huairu looked at Nietion and said, "If everything goes according to plan, the moment the heavenly meteorite stone unseals the first star trace dark seal and releases the power of the stars, it will be enough for you to break through to the half-step saint realm." Nietion sat cross-legged in the middle of the stellar origin formation and nodded. Previously, the resonance of the stars did not help him break through to the half-step saint realm, but this time, he would definitely break through. More importantly, he did not have much time left. The 3-month deadline he had agreed with the ancestor of the Nangong family, Nangong Jueming, was almost up. Therefore, after merging with the heavenly meteorite stone, he must immediately return to the 9 territories. Nietion, I'm going to start. Huairu nodded slightly, and then activated the stellar origin formation. At the same time, the heavenly meteorite stone appeared above Nietion's head, suspended in midair and dazzling white. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Then, the stellar origin formation began to release waves of formation energy, which instantly converged into a trickle and flowed into the heavenly meteorite stone. The stellar origin formation was very mysterious, and it cleverly used the power of the ice-fire lake to continuously absorb energy from the ice-fire lake to maintain the operation of the formation. Without the ice-fire lake, the stellar origin formation would not have lasted for half a month. Boom! After the heavenly meteorite stone absorbed the power of the formation, the power inside the star stone was stimulated and began to release, condensing into a white halo in the air, which enveloped Nietion. Nietion focused his senses, and the boundary origin formation in his body continued to operate, making his whole body seem like a huge whirlpool, constantly absorbing the white halo around him. At this moment, Nietion felt the power in his body constantly increasing, and it rushed into his body, making him feel extremely comfortable. Very good, everything is going very smoothly. Huairu sensed Nietion's aura, and smiled faintly, his eyes full of anticipation. He didn't know what kind of changes Nietion's strength would undergo after he broke the seal on the first star mark. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Outside the ice-fire lake, Huairu looked at Nietion with a surprised expression, and he could not believe his eyes. At this time, the heavenly meteorite stone above Nietion's head had disappeared, completely absorbed by him. Huairu had originally predicted that it would take Nietion half a month to integrate with the heavenly meteorite stone, but he did not expect that in just 3 days, Nietion would absorb the heavenly meteorite stone. At this time, he felt that there was a pure power of yang surging in Nietion's body, impacting the boundary of the galaxy. The power of the 900 billion stars in Nietion's body became very active, and the light was dazzling, illuminating the 9 layers of the galaxy. Boom! At this time, the pure power of yang suddenly exploded, turned into a ripple of light, and instantly filled the boundary of the galaxy. Immediately after, the ripple of light was absorbed by the endless power of the stars. In the interior of each star power, the star-marked dark seal was impacted by the huge power, and unexpectedly loosened. The star-marked dark seal is about to break. Huairu felt the changes in Nietion's body, and his expression was extremely shocked, and his voice trembled. Boom! At this time, a terrible momentum appeared on Nietion's body, soaring into the sky, and formed a visible shock wave in the air. At this moment, the first star-marked dark seal was finally broken. Buzz! Immediately after, a terrifying shock wave spread out in all directions, causing the surrounding space to let out a deep groan. In an instant, Hua Iru's chest inexplicably sank, and his expression changed. His mind trembled, his body swayed, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. At the same time, the giant mountains and rivers outside Ice Fire Valley also felt their minds tremble inexplicably, and they vomited blood. In the entire Holy Soul Academy, and even the entire Holy Soul Domain, all the martial artists felt their minds tremble inexplicably, and then they vomited blood. Even the martial artists with peak strength felt their minds tremble inexplicably, and then they vomited blood. Far in the extreme north of the Holy Soul Domain, the Ruthless Sea, a figure stood on a huge reef, frowning, and a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. If Nie Tian were here, he would recognize this figure at a glance. It was Eternally Merciless. Chapter 28:45. Shocking battle prowess. Eternally Merciless furrowed his brows and looked into the distance. After a long time, he said, "What kind of power is this? How could it possibly hurt me? Wuqing, why do I feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity from this power?" A deep voice sounded from behind Eternally Merciless. This figure was none other than Nie Fenghua. "Is that so?" Eternally Merciless turned around to look at Nie Fenghua and chuckled. "Could it be that you know this senior?" He subconsciously assumed that the person who released this power was a Martial Dao senior. "I don't know, I just feel an inexplicable sense of familiarity." Nie Fenghua wiped the blood stain from the corner of his mouth and said while shaking his head, "I really don't know who could release such a terrifying power." Eternally Merciless' gaze turned gloomy as he thought of something. A trace of fear appeared on his face as he exclaimed, "Don't tell me someone has become a martial saint. That's unlikely." Nie Fenghua shook his head with a dumbfounded expression. Eternally Merciless' expression was as calm as still water. He did not speak another word. At the same time, in the Icefire Valley of the Sacred Soul Academy, Nie Tian suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were as bright as the stars, clear and sharp. "I've broken through." Nie Tian's eyes trembled as he exclaimed in surprise the moment he opened his eyes. In just 3 days' time, he had successfully broken the first star-marked dark seal after fusing with the heavenly meteorite. Furthermore, Nie Tian's strength had also broken through to the first-grade half-martial saint realm. Although the difference between the peak immortal realm and the first-grade half-martial saint was only a small level, the difference was like the distance between heaven and earth. Just by breaking through to the first-grade half-martial saint realm, Nie Tian's strength had increased by several times. More importantly, he had also broken the first star-marked dark seal. The star-marked dark seal's unsealing had caused the star energy in Nie Tian's body to undergo a qualitative change. At this moment, just the change in the power of the stars had increased his battle prowess by several times. In addition, the 9 Extremes War God Art had broken through to the second stage, the Extreme Wood Jade Heaven Realm, and he had awakened 64 Godfiend powers. His martial body had also become even more powerful. Therefore, Nie Tian's overall combat strength was dozens of times stronger than before. Previously, he could fight a 5th-rank half-saint under normal circumstances. Yet now, he could go against a 9th-rank half-saint with ease. After all, he was only a first-step half-saint. "Nie Tian, how do you feel?" At that moment, Huairu spoke up. He seemed very excited. "I feel very good." Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "At this moment, I can even easily deal with a 7th or 8th rank half-saint." Nie Tian was rather conservative when it came to improving his combat strength. "Yes, very good." Huairu nodded heavily. He was even more excited than Nie Tian. He originally predicted that Nie Tian would need half a month to fuse with the heavenly meteorite stone. Who knew that Nie Tian would only take 3 days, which greatly exceeded his expectations. "Elder Hua, what's wrong?" Nie Tian smiled faintly and moved to Huairu's side. He couldn't help but frown when he saw the latter's pale face. "I'm fine." Huairu smiled and did not explain anything. Little did Nye Tian know that the commotion caused by unsealing the star-marked dark seal was too big and injured Huairu. "Boss." At that moment, Zhu Shan and Zhu He appeared. When they saw Nye Tian, they exclaimed in surprise, "You've broken through." "Yes." Nye Tian nodded and said, "Thank you for your hard work." Zhu Shan and Zhu He chuckled, unable to conceal the shock in their eyes. When they first broke through to the half-saint realm, it took them Herculean effort and over 100 years. But Nye Tian broke through to the half-saint realm in 2 or 3 days without any effort at all. "Nye Tian, I want to see how strong you are." At that moment, Huairu suddenly smiled and said while looking at Zhu Shan and Zhu He, "Okay." Nye Tian smiled faintly. Of course, he understood what Huairu meant. He said to Zhu Shan and Zhu He, "Brother Shanha, let's have a try." "Okay." The Shanha brothers were very excited. They laughed and said, "Boss, you've just broken through. We brothers won't be lenient." With a faint smile, Nye Tian said, "Go ahead and use your full strength." Then, he blurred into action and appeared outside of the Ice Flame Valley. Huairu looked at Nye Tian with anticipation. He wanted to see with his own eyes how strong Nye Tian was at this moment. The Zhu Shan and Zhu He brothers were experts of the outer court. Moreover, their martial bodies were strong and their strength was stronger than warriors of the same level. If Nye Tian's strength was equivalent to a 7th or 8th stage half-saint, it would be very difficult for him to defeat the Shanha brothers. "Boss, we're going to attack. Be careful." Zhu Shan and Zhu He looked at each other and took a step forward at the same time. Then, they instantly released their aura and fused together in the air. 2 huge fists punched out at the same time. Boom! The void suddenly trembled. Then, a huge fist shadow rushed over like a mountain. The ground directly cracked. Good timing. Facing the powerful punch of the Shanha brothers, Nye Tian smiled faintly. There was no fear in his eyes. Boom! In the next moment, he took a step forward and also punched out. The golden fist shadow roared like a dragon and fiercely attacked. Huairu's face darkened when he saw this. He did not expect Nye Tian to be so confident. He did not use his sword and chose to fight the Shanha brothers head-on. However, what happened next made his expression instantly change to one of shock. Boom! In the void, the 2 fist shadows collided. The sound of metal colliding was heard. Then, a huge impact spread out, shattering all the rocks around them. The Shanha brothers swayed at the same time and were forced to retreat dozens of meters before they could stabilize their bodies. Nye Tian, on the other hand, did not move at all. He was as steady as a mountain. The eyes of the Shanha brothers trembled at the same time. They could not believe what they were seeing. Even a 9th stage half-saint might not be able to withstand the combined attack of the 2 of them. And yet, Nye Tian easily blocked it with a casual punch. He even had the upper hand. That was too fierce. Nye Tian, you. Huairu was stunned for a few seconds before he came to his senses. He looked at Nye Tian with trembling eyes and did not know what to say. It was only then that he realized that Nye Tian had been hiding his strength from him. Nye Tian could fight a 9th stage half-saint at the moment. Huairu even felt that Nye Tian could fight a low-level demi-saint if he was at his limit. Demi-saint and demi-saint might appear to be a whole tier apart, but it was actually just a small tier. It would not take a long time for a martial artist whose talent was not too monstrous to rise from a 1st stage half-saint to a 9th stage half-saint. Whatever the case may be, Nye Tian's current combat ability was so stunning that Huairu did not expect it at all. "Boss, we've lost." Zhu Shan and Zhu He withdrew their auras and said dejectedly. Just now, Nye Tian had defeated the mountain and river brothers casually without using his sword. If he had used his sword, he would have killed the Shanha brothers with ease. "Thanks for letting me win." Nye Tian smiled faintly, very satisfied with the improvement of his strength. "Nie Tian, I can let you return to the 9 realms without worries now that you have such strength." Huairu looked at Nie Tian and smiled faintly. Chapter 2846. What did you say? During his time in the Saint Soul realm, Nie Tian had been thinking about the 9 realms all the time. When he left the 9 zones, he had set a 3-month deadline with Nangong Jueming. Now, the 3-month deadline was almost up. He was worried about Nye Dao and the others, and he could not wait to return to the 9 zones. "Don't be anxious. There are still 10 days before the 3-month deadline between us and Nangong Jueming." Huairu smiled and said, "You are not weak now, but you are still lacking compared to Nangong Jueming. For the time being, you should focus on cultivating, stabilizing your level, and improving your strength. I will arrange everything for you and personally send you back to the 9 zones." "Alright." Nie Tian nodded, and then his eyes trembled as he asked, "Elder Hua, how strong is that Nangong bastard? What are my chances of winning against him now?" Nie Tian only knew that Nangong Jueming was an ancestor of the Nangong clan and a former student of the Saint Spirit Academy. As for how strong he was, Nie Tian did not know. When Nie Tian first met Nangong Jueming, he was only a supreme god and had no idea what a half-saint was capable of. Nangong Jueming is a level 3 demi-saint. Huairu's eyes darkened when he heard Nie Tian's question. "It is too much for you to fight him now. But don't worry, I will help you." "All right." Nie Tian nodded again and said solemnly, "Thank you, Elder Hua." "Nie Tian, focus on your cultivation." Huairu smiled faintly and left. Fearing that someone would disturb Nie Tian, Zhu Shan and Zhu He stood guard outside the Icefire Valley and did not let anyone near. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Nie Tian walked out of the Icefire Valley with a sharp aura that was even stronger than before. Nie Tian. Huairu was already waiting for Nie Tian the moment he walked out of the valley. "Elder Hua." Nie Tian was very excited to see Huairu. "I've already arranged everything for you. You can leave the Holy Soul Academy now and go to the 9 regions to carry out your mission," Huairu said with a faint smile. "Carry out an academy mission?" Nie Tian was stunned for a moment, not quite understanding what Huairu meant. Nangong Jueming left the Sacred Soul region without permission. This is against the rules of the Sacred Soul region. Huairu nodded and explained, "Because you came from the 9 regions, the Academy sent you to the 9 regions to capture and kill Nangong Jueming." "Understood." Nie Tian smiled faintly. He was very satisfied with Huairu's arrangement. However, at that moment, Huairu's face darkened, and he said, "Nie Tian, because the space and time of the 9 realms are very special, you will be carrying out this mission alone. You must be careful." "Yes." Nie Tian nodded heavily. The 9 realms were located at the core of the myriad realms, and their space-time was oppressed by the other realms. Therefore, cultivators who were not from the 9 regions would be oppressed by the space-time after entering the 9 regions. Next, Nie Tian followed Huairu to the space-time formation. Before Nie Tian entered the space-time formation, a divine pill appeared in Huairu's hand and he handed it to Nie Tian. "Nie Tian, this is a Star Soul pill. Take it with you and use it at a critical moment." "Star Soul pill?" Nie Tian was stunned. When he received the Star Soul pill, his expression involuntarily changed. He could feel the enormous aura of the stars from the Star Soul pill. The Star Soul pill can temporarily remove the seal on your second star trace dark seal. Huairu frowned and said, "However, with your current strength, the removal of the seal on your second star trace dark seal will have a great impact on your martial physique. Therefore, after the effect of the Star Soul pill ends, your martial physique will be extremely weak. It will take at least half a month to recover. You must not use the Star Soul pill unless you have no other choice. Do you understand?" "Yes, I understand." Nie Tian nodded with a smile and put the Star Soul pill away. Then, He didn't waste any more time and directly entered the spacetime formation. Under the guidance of a cultivator, he entered a spacetime pillar. In the next moment, Nye Tian felt the space around him change. His figure appeared in a chaotic void. "I'm back." Nye Tian steadied himself and glanced around. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. At this moment, he had already returned to the God exclusion domain. This was the place where he had entered the Saint Soul domain. Nye Tian wanted to leave immediately. However, he suddenly felt a hidden aura in the void. He couldn't help but frown. Then he sneered, "Come out!" In the next moment, a surprised voice resounded in the void. Then a familiar figure appeared. Like a ghost, he floated in the void. "Lord of the Reverse Scale, long time no see." Nye Tian suddenly turned around. His cold eyes locked onto the person who had appeared behind him. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold and murderous smile. The person who had appeared behind Nye Tian was none other than the strongest expert of the reverse scale, one of the 9 territories' 3 great mysterious organizations, the Lord of the Reverse Scale. Nye Tian wasn't unfamiliar with the Lord of the Reverse Scale. When he left the 9 territories and went to the Frozen Ruins, it was the Lord of the Reverse Scale and Nangong Duxiu who had joined forces to severely injure him. He had almost died at the hands of the Lord of the Reverse Scale's Black Scale Curse. Now that he had met his enemy, how could he not be jealous? The Lord of the Reverse Scale exclaimed in surprise. He was actually panicking. The moment Nye Tian stared at him, the Lord of the Reverse Scale felt a chill that seeped into his bones. This cold and murderous aura made his heart tremble. What shocked him even more was that he couldn't sense Nye Tian's strength at all. It was as if the latter was a vast ocean. How is this possible? The Lord of the Reverse Scale's heart trembled, and he almost cried out in alarm. The last time he had seen Nye Tian, the latter had been a good-for-nothing in his eyes. But now, he was so strong that a single glance from him could make him tremble in fear. How could he have imagined that Nye Tian had already become a semi-sage expert? "Are you surprised?" Nye Tianling sneered and said with a playful expression, "You're quite astute. You've been waiting for me here for a long time." "You, how could your strength?" The Lord of the Reverse Scale's voice trembled. His bloodthirsty eyes were now filled with fear and trepidation. He had indeed been waiting for Nye Tian here for a month. Unfortunately, what he had waited for wasn't prey, but the Grim Reaper. "How could you be so strong?" Nye Tianling sneered. He took a step forward and the sword intent around his body surged wildly, directly enveloping the Lord of the Reverse Scale. "No!" The Lord of the Reverse Scale screamed in fear as he felt the aura of death descend upon him. At this moment, he didn't have the slightest strength to fight back in front of Nye Tian. He couldn't even release the Black Scale Curse. "If you don't want to die, then you're courting death." Nye Tian's eyes turned cold as he revealed his killing intent. He was about to kill the Lord of the Reverse Scale. "Don't kill me. I'll tell you something." The Lord of the Reverse Scale's pupils shrank as he shouted, "Your Nye family has been exterminated by the Nangong family." Chapter 2847. Get out of my way. When Nye Tian heard the words of the Lord of the Reverse Scale, his eyes darkened. The aura released from his body was cold and murderous, chilling to the bone. I. The Lord of the Reverse Scale felt Nye Tian's murderous intent. His face stiffened, his teeth trembled, and he couldn't say a word. "Say it again." Nye Tian's entire body was incomparably cold. His eyes were trembling, as if he was a devil that had just walked out of the abyss of hell, causing people to tremble in fear. The Lord of the Reverse Scale was scared silly. He couldn't imagine that such a young martial artist could release such a terrifying murderous intent. Nye family was destroyed by Nangong Jueming. The Lord of the Reverse Scale's voice trembled. He finally repeated what he had just said. "How do you know?" Nye Tian's eyes were so cold that it made people shiver. He ground his teeth so hard that they cracked. Everyone in the 9 territories knows. Nangong Jueming has unified the 9 territories, so those who didn't submit to him were all killed. The Lord of the Reverse Scale was so scared that his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Ah! Nye Tian's trembling eyes suddenly froze, and he suddenly roared like a wild beast. Suddenly, the killing intent around him seemed to have solidified and surged in the air. It actually merged with the sword intent around him, turning into numerous sharp blades that were as sharp as the killing intent around him. Bang! At this moment, the Lord of the Reverse Scale suddenly felt the murderous intent approaching. Before he could react, his body exploded, and blood splattered everywhere. He was a martial artist at the peak of the immortal realm, but he was killed by Nye Tian's furious aura. At this moment, Nye Tian was so angry that he felt like he was about to explode. His heart was burning with rage. He didn't expect that Nangong Jueming would go back on his word and attack the Nye family before the 3-month deadline was up. Nangong Jueming, if I don't kill you, I'm not Nye Tian. In the next moment Nye Tian roared. His body moved like a rainbow, heading toward 9 Heaven City. He ran all the way like an angry beast. After a few hours, Nye Tian's figure appeared above 9 Heaven's mountain range. In front of him was a pile of ruins. It was Ci Guang City that was destroyed by the Nangong family and the Holy Parliament. When he saw Compassion Light City again and recalled the scene of corpses strewn all over the place, fury surged in his heart. His eyes were bloodshot and completely devoid of emotion, as if he were a bloodthirsty beast. Get out! It was at this moment that he suddenly sensed several auras appearing in the surroundings. His face stiffened and he roared furiously. Nye Tian, as expected, you appeared of Guang City. The next moment, the void shook and 4 figures appeared. They were the twin chiefs of heaven and earth, the 7 kills of the killer form, and the 9 blazing blades of the evil form. Is studio _ you. S Jueming Y. Studio is as Jueming. Flaming Ju Feng took a step forward. Seeing Nye Tian's state, he guessed that the latter already knew about the great changes in the 9 regions. Get out of my way, Nye Tian said coldly. His eyes were as fierce as a wolf's. Nye Tian, the matter of the Nye family being exterminated might not be true. If you enter the city in your current state, you will only be courting death. Do you know that Nangong Jueming and the 9 calamity gods have already set up an inescapable net, waiting for you to appear? Flaming Ju Feng said solemnly. The 9 calamity gods, he came out of seclusion. Nye Tian heard the name of the 9 calamity gods, and his eyes trembled. The 9 calamity gods came out of seclusion half a month ago. Furthermore, the Holy Parliament is now under the control of the Nangong family, and the 9 calamity gods have become Nangong Jueming's subordinates. Flaming Ju Feng said solemnly, Nye Tian, come with us. As long as you help us revive the Underworld Emperor, he will definitely avenge the Nye family. Get out. Nye Tian suddenly raised his head. His eyes were like crimson moons. They were extremely terrifying. He would take revenge for the Nye family himself. There was no need for others to do it. Flaming Ju Feng sensed Nye Tian's aura, and his eyes trembled as he roared, Nye Tian, the tear of the Empress is on you. You must come with us. The reason why the ancient underworld race was waiting for Nye Tian in the 9 Heavens mountain range was to revive the Underworld Emperor. The revival of the Underworld Emperor had reached the final step. They needed the tear of the Empress in Nye Tian's body. I'll say it one last time. Get out of my way. Nye Tianling's eyes trembled. His eyes were bloodshot and murderous. He was extremely terrifying. Because of Cher, he didn't want to fight Flaming Ju Feng and the others. However, if these people still wanted to stop him, they couldn't blame him for being ruthless. Attack! Flaming Ju Feng frowned and roared. In the next moment, the twin chiefs of heaven and earth and 7 kills moved together. In a flash, they surrounded Nye Tian. Nye Tian's eyes trembled. He found that 7 kills and flaming Jufeng had reached the peak of the God realm. However, it was a pity that such strength was not enough. Nye Tian, surrender yourself. Flaming Jufeng roared and shouted, I know that you have reached the sage to be level. However, with the 4 of us together and the 6 underworld great formation, you won't be able to withstand it. As soon as he finished speaking, the twin chiefs of heaven and earth, 7 kills, and flaming Jufeng released waves of ancient demonic qi. It was like a thick dark cloud that instantly sealed the space and enveloped Nye Tian. Flaming Jufeng knew that Nye Tian's strength would skyrocket after returning from the Saint's Soul realm. Therefore, he prepared the 6 underworld great formation in advance to capture Nye Tian. Boom! 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 The terrifying ancient demonic qi raged in the void like countless invisible giant hands, firmly enveloping Nye Tian. Flaming Jufeng and the others had been cultivating the 6 underworld great formation for a long time just for this moment. Even a sage-to-be expert couldn't break the great formation under the joint forces of the 4 ancient underworld experts. However, at this moment, Nye Tian suddenly roared like a wild beast, Get lost! Boom! In the next moment, sword essence surged out from his body. Suddenly, a sword momentum appeared and soared into the sky. Majestic and mighty power surged in an instant. Rays of sword light broke through the shackles of the ancient demonic qi and bloomed in the void. Bang! 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 Immediately, 4 muffled sounds came from the sky. Flaming Jufeng and the others were directly thrown back, and the 6 underworld great formation was instantly broken. 4 bloody trails appeared in the sky. They flew several thousand meters before they managed to stabilize themselves. How is this possible? Flaming Jufeng forcibly stabilized his body. His body was covered in blood and his face was as white as paper. He looked at Nye Tian in horror. The twin chiefs of heaven and earth and 7 kills were also stunned and speechless. The 4 of them joined forces and the 6 underworld great formation of the ancient underworld race. However, they couldn't trap Nye Tian and were easily broken by him. How powerful had Nye Tian become at this moment? High in the sky, Nye Tianling glanced coldly at flaming Jufeng and the others. He didn't say anything and moved directly toward 9 Heavens City. He still had some sense and didn't kill flaming Jufeng and the others. If he fully released his aura, flaming Jufeng and the others would definitely die tragically on the spot. Nye Tian. Flaming Jufeng looked at Nye Tian's figure and shouted. However, the latter had disappeared in an instant. After a while, Nye Tian's figure appeared in the sky above 9 Heavens City. His figure stood there like a sword. Chapter 28:48. Soaring murderous intent. The voice reverberated in the air and echoed throughout the entire 9 Heavens City. A moment later, countless figures appeared in the city and raised their heads, staring at the figure in the sky. It's Nye Tian. Someone recognized Nye Tian and exclaimed in astonishment. The crowd exploded after confirming Nye Tian's identity. He's Nye Tian from the Nye clan. The Nye clan was annihilated, yet he still dares to return. I heard that Nye Tian and the ancestor of the Nangong clan had a deal. Within 3 months, the ancestor of the Nangong clan was not allowed to harm the Nye clan. But now, the ancestor of the Nangong clan has annihilated the Nye clan before the 3 months are up. This guy is filled with murderous intent. It's obvious that he's here for revenge. I heard that the ancestor of the Nangong clan was an expert who surpassed the immortal realm. This kid is so young, what makes him think he's here for revenge? The crowd discussed among themselves. Their gazes toward Nye Tian were filled with shock, terror, and disdain. Although Nye Tian had displayed a shocking aura, in the crowd's opinion, there was no way he could stand a chance against Nangong Jueming. Nangong Jueming, show yourself! At that instant, Nye Tian let out another roar. Sword intent surged around him, making him look like a giant sword standing in the sky. This kid, such a powerful aura! The crowd's eyes trembled as they sensed the terrifying aura descending from the sky. Rumble! In the next moment, countless black-robed figures appeared in Nine Heavens City and shot into the sky. Like streaks of black light, they surrounded Nyetian. Sacred martial guardians! The crowd's eyes flickered as they exclaimed. These figures in black were the sacred martial guardians of the sacred parliament. There were over 1,000 sacred martial guardians that had appeared in an instant. It was obvious that they had been hiding in the city for a long time, waiting for Nyetian's arrival. Kill! As soon as the sacred martial imperial guardians appeared, they did not waste any time and uttered a furious roar, resulting in a shocking aura. Their figures sprang into action, firing countless ferocious attacks at Nyetian's figure like a storm. All of you, scram! Nyetian's eyes trembled, and with a low roar, his body shook violently. Suddenly, the sword momentum around him exploded, turning into waves of sword will in the void, rushing in all directions. Bang, bang, bang! The sword intent was like killing everywhere it passed. There was a bloody light, scarlet and dazzling. When the sword will wave disappeared, the blood light in the sky connected to form a blood screen. The endless smell of blood permeated the air, and even the sky and earth were dyed red. At this moment, everyone's eyes were dull and their expressions were stiff. It was as if they had fallen into a terrifying dream. This scene was too terrifying. Sword Aura Nyetian had killed thousands of sacred martial imperial guards with just the explosive sword aura. One should know that these sacred martial imperial guards were all supreme god martial artists. However, before Nyetian, they were like chickens and dogs, unable to withstand a single blow. High up in the sky, Nyetian's eyes trembled coldly, as if there was no emotion in them, only murderous intent. At this moment, when the crowd looked at Nyetian again, they could feel the endless murderous intent rushing at them. Even breathing became difficult. Boom, boom, boom. Following that, within Nine Heaven City, even more black-clothed figures appeared. Wave after wave, it was as if a dark cloud was rising up. All of you deserve to die. Nyetian's eyes were bloodshot, and his murderous aura surged. He roared like a wild beast, and the sword intent around him was unleashed continuously. H. Bang, 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 cries of agony, muffled explosions, and layers of blood screens rained down from the sky like a rain of blood. This was a massacre, a bloody massacre. These black-robed cultivators could be considered experts in the 9 regions. However, in front of the stronger Nyetian, they were less than ants. A moment later, in the sky full of bloody rays, all the figures in black disappeared, leaving only a silver-haired figure standing in the sky like a mountain. The crowd's eyes trembled. Looking at Nyetian, they could feel their souls trembling. Standing there, Nyetian was like a bottomless abyss of killing intent. Anyone who dared to approach him would be instantly crushed to death by his killing intent. At this moment, Nyetian's figure suddenly moved, and a long sword appeared in his hand. He's going to attack? What is he doing? He's not going to kill everyone in Nine Heaven City, is he? The crowd's eyes trembled, and their hearts were in their throats. At this moment, the crowd believed that if Nyetian wanted to, he could destroy the entire Nine Heaven City. Boom! High up in the sky, Nyetian raised his long sword, and sword intent exploded from his entire body. He slashed down angrily, and instantly, a sword shadow over 10,000 meters long appeared. Like a giant dragon descending from the sky, it swooped down and struck the ground. It's the Nangong family's residence. At this moment, someone reacted and exclaimed. It turned out that Nyetian's sword was aimed directly at the Nangong family's residence. If the sword landed, the entire Nangong family's residence would be instantly razed to the ground. Since Nangong Jueming was not going to appear, Nyetian could only force him out. Boom! However, just as the sword shadow was about to land, an enormous force suddenly rose from the Nangong family's residence, soaring into the sky. Rumble! Bang bang bang! That force collided with the sword shadow, and actually blocked the sword shadow. Endless sword intent surged out and filled the void. Damn it! Nye Tian growled as he came to a realization. The entire Nangong family's residence was protected by a giant formation. Nangong Jueming was indeed an old fox. He knew that Nye Tian was going to attack the Nangong family's residence, so he used a giant formation to protect the residence. This kind of formation cannot stop my sword. However, the next moment, Nye Tian growled and the sword intent around his body became even more violent. Then, he slashed down with an even more terrifying sword. Kaboom! Crack crack crack! Bang! Then, the sword shadow landed on the giant formation. Instantly, a crack appeared on the giant formation's barrier. Then, the crack spread and the barrier exploded. Rumble! Then, the entire Nangong family's residence shook and collapsed. A giant pit was formed. Seeing this, the crowd was dumbfounded. They were unable to express the shock they felt. The Nangong family had just unified the 9 territories, and now, the Nangong family's residence was destroyed by a single sword. However, after the Nangong family's residence was destroyed, what followed was dead silence. Nangong Jueming's figure was still nowhere to be seen. Nangong Jueming, get out here! At this moment, Nye Tian was about to go crazy. He bellowed and his blood chi surged. His murderous intent was boundless. Nye Tian. At this moment, a deep voice suddenly sounded. Then, a figure appeared in the distant sky. Nangong Duxiu. Upon hearing this voice, Nye Tian abruptly turned around and stared at the figure with killing intent in his eyes. He called out the other party's name one word at a time. Chapter 2849. Extreme Fury. A member of the Nangong clan. The crowd looked at Nangong Duxiu, who had suddenly appeared, and their eyes trembled as they exclaimed. Nye Tian stared at Nangong Duxiu, his eyes surging with killing intent as if he could no longer suppress it. But he did not attack immediately, because he wanted to wait for Nangong Duxiu to tell him where Nangong Jueming was. Nangong Duxiu looked at Nye Tian with a lifeless expression, his body trembling uncontrollably. He felt despair, a despair that reached deep into his soul. He had never expected that Nye Tian's strength had reached such a level. Speak! Nye Tian's eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke in a cold voice. My ancestor is waiting for you in the Wind and Cloud Alliance. Nangong Duxiu naturally knew what Nye Tian wanted him to say. His voice was trembling, and his body was drenched in cold sweat, as if his heart was about to stop beating. After saying that, his figure moved and he wanted to leave. But at this moment, he felt an extremely cold aura appear and instantly lock onto him. Cold, a bone-chilling cold. Nangong Duxiu felt his blood freeze. He wanted to take a step forward, but his body was not under his control, and he could not move at all. Killing intent. The crowd also felt a bone-chilling cold, and their eyes trembled as they looked at Nye Tian in horror. This was the most extreme killing intent, condensed into a solid form. Previously, Nye Tian had seen people with condensed killing intent, the 7 murders of the killing form. At this moment, his murderous aura had actually solidified. At this moment, Nye Tian was like an abyss filled with killing intent, as if he wanted to destroy everything. Nangong Duxiu, pay with your life for my Nye clan. At the next moment, Nye Tian spoke, and his figure moved. With a single step, he arrived beside Nangong Duxiu. Nye Tian, what are you doing? Nangong Duxiu saw that Nye Tian was only a meter away from him, and his heart stopped beating. A soul-piercing killing intent enveloped him. He felt despair that seeped into his bones. Die, Nye Tianling said coldly. There was no emotion in his eyes. He slowly extended his hand and grabbed Nangong Dushio's head. Crack, crack, crack. With a slight bit of strength, his fingers crushed Nangong Dushio's skull. Nye clan, still, still. Nangong Dushio's eyes suddenly froze and turned bloodshot. His mouth was wide open as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't have the chance to. Bang! With a muffled cracking sound, Nangong Dushio's head exploded. Blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. His body swayed and then fell to the ground. Blood sprayed into the air like a withered leaf. Nangong Dushio, the vice president of the Sacred Assembly, the former strongest expert of the Nangong clan, died just like that. Everyone's gaze stiffened. They could not believe what they had just witnessed. Nye Tian's method of killing was too brutal. It was a real torture. In the next moment, his figure moved, and he turned into a stream of light and disappeared. How can he be so strong? The crowd looked in the direction that Nye Tian disappeared in. Their hearts trembled, and their eyes were filled with panic. They felt that the man standing high up in the sky just now could destroy almost everything. A moment later, Nye Tian's figure arrived at the Wind Cloud Plaza. On the huge plaza, there were over a dozen towering stone pillars, as if they were giants that stood between heaven and earth. However, when Nye Tian saw these stone pillars, his austere eyes suddenly trembled. He was instantly enraged. His facial features distorted, and his entire person became sinister and terrifying. At this moment, there were countless bloody figures hanging on the stone pillars. These blood-colored martial artists were dripping with blood. Their bodies were pierced by numerous iron hooks. Their yuan meridians were crippled, but they did not die. Instead, they were bleeding and waiting for death. It was obvious that someone did not want them to die too easily. Thus, they used such inhumane methods to torture them before they died. This scene caused Nye Tian's expression to instantly contort. The blood in his body violently flowed in the opposite direction. His entire body felt like it was burning, and he was about to explode. At this moment, Nye Tian was completely enraged. His demonic eye instantly turned pitch black like an abyss. An unprecedented demonic aura was emitted from his body. That's right, it was demonic aura. A demonic aura that caused people to tremble. Grandpa! And at this time, Nye Tian suddenly saw a figure dripping with blood. It was actually Nye Dao. Nye Dao was hanging on a stone pillar. His chest had been pierced by 2 iron hooks. His flesh was lacerated, and blood was flowing out wildly. He only had 1 breath left. His eyes were fixed on Nye Tian, and within that despair, a glimmer of light emerged. 5th uncle, 6th uncle. Nye Tian's figure moved. He took a step forward and saw that hanging beside Nye Dao were his 5th uncle, Nye Filiu, and 6th uncle, Nye Feiyu. Nye Filiu and Nye Feiyu saw Nye Tian at the same time. They opened their mouths with difficulty, but they could not utter the word Tian. There were other people beside Nye Filiu and Nye Feiyu. They were all members of the Nye family. There were even many women and children hanging on the stone pillars. All of them had their yuan meridians crippled. They were hanging alive, waiting for their last drop of blood to flow out before they died. Nye Tian's gaze trembled as if it was about to burst into flames. The scene in front of him almost caused him to go crazy. Ah! In the next moment, he roared at the sky like a wild beast. The sword intent around him continued to surge. Gradually, it condensed into a giant sword that pierced through the heavens and earth. It became larger and larger, more and more intense, and it emitted an incomparably cold-blooded killing intent. Nye Tian, are you satisfied with this gift in front of you? At this moment, a low and cold voice sounded. At the same time, a figure appeared on one of the stone pillars. Jiang Lai. Nye Tian's gaze trembled as he coldly called out the name of the person who had come. In the next instant, he saw that the figure hanging on the stone pillar under Jiang Lai's feet was actually someone he was familiar with. the divine martial sword pagoda's sword master Gongsun Xingji, the thousand feather towers master Fenghua Qianyu, the Yu family's master Yu Shunglin, the Guiwu family's Guiwu Guangsha, and too many people he knew were all here. Nangong Jueming had captured all those who disobeyed him and used this extremely cruel method to torture them to death. As for those who were willing to obey him, they became his lackeys, just like Alliance Master Xingtian, Jiang Lai. Nie Tian, don't move recklessly. With a light touch, these stone pillars will collapse. Your family and your friends will all die. Jiang Lai stared at Nie Tian, his gaze playful. His tone was filled with undisguised mockery. Die. However, Nie Tian's gaze trembled. A beast-like roar came from his throat. Then, his figure instantly moved. Like a sharp arrow, he shot through the air. You! Jiang Lai suddenly felt a terrifying killing intent envelop him. His eyes trembled. He wanted to say something, but stopped abruptly. Chapter 2850. You're dead. You how? Jiang Lai's eyes froze as he felt suffocated. His mouth was wide open but no sound came out. Die. Nie Tian's eyes were extremely strange. One of his eyes was blood red while the other was as dark as the abyss. Coldly, he spat out a single word. Bang. Then, he exerted force in his hand and directly crushed Jiang Lai's neck. Blood splattered on his face but he didn't feel it at all. At this moment, there was only one word in Nie Tian's eyes. Kill. The dignified leader of the Xingtian Alliance, once a peak expert of the 9 regions, died. Jiang Lai would never have imagined that he would die like this, and in such a bloody manner, at the hands of Nie Tian. After killing Jiang Lai, Nie Tian glanced at the 12 stone pillars and solemnly said, I will definitely save you. Nie Tian, go. Go. At this time, a voice was intermittent. Although it was extremely weak, it was like thunder in Nie Tian's ears. Grandfather. Nie Tian's figure moved and appeared beside Nie Dao. The person who spoke was Nie Dao. Grandfather, don't speak. I will definitely save you. Nie Tian's voice trembled as he nervously said. At this time, Nie Dao's aura was extremely weak. Any fluctuation of energy could instantly take his life. Nie Dao looked at Nie Tian as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Believe me, I will definitely save you. Nie Tian clenched his fists tightly as his eyes trembled. Clap, clap, clap. At this time, several claps resounded in the air. Then, a figure appeared in the air, coldly and mockingly looking at Nie Tian. He laughed loudly. The love between grandfather and grandson is deep. What a heartwarming scene. Huojiushin. When Nie Tian heard this voice, his expression changed. He immediately turned around and looked at the void. A black-robed figure appeared in his vision, standing there like an abyss. It was none other than the leader of the sacred faction, 9 Gods Calamity. The last time Nie Tian saw Calamity 9, this person had forced him and his wife to separate. Not only did Mo Rushi have to take refuge in the Nie family's ancestral land, but Cher was also taken away by the inescapable net. After that, Nie Tian helped him open the 12th floor of the glazed demon pagoda. Only then did he stop. After that, Huojiushin entered seclusion in the glazed demon pagoda. Fat Cat estimated that Huojiushin might break through to the half-saint realm within 10 years. Unexpectedly, this guy broke through in advance and came out of the glazed demon pagoda half a month ago. However, after Huojiushin came out of seclusion, he never expected that a Nangong Jueming would appear in the 9 regions, an existence that could completely crush him. He originally thought that he could easily destroy the Wind and Cloud Alliance and the Xingtian Alliance after coming out of seclusion. He never expected that even his sacred parliament would fall into the hands of the Nangong family. At this moment, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only be a dog by Nangong Jueming's side and let him order him around. Nie Tian, I really didn't expect you to be so courageous. Huojiushin looked at Nie Tian and said cold, I heard that you've already witnessed Lord Nangong Jueming's strength, but you still dared to come here alone. How admirable! Huajiushan, you deserve to die. Nie Tian's eyes instantly darkened. It was as if he hadn't heard Huajiushan's words at all. Instead, his figure moved, and like a giant sharp sword, he directly attacked. Humph. Huajiushan's cold eyes trembled for a moment, and he let out 2 cold laughs. Then, his eyes suddenly darkened, and a monstrous force appeared in the void, instantly sealing off the space. Nie Tian felt the space around him suddenly freeze. His expression changed, and he growled, 9 pupils. That's right, the power Huajiushan was currently using was the 9 pupils. Nie Tian, you overestimate yourself. This president has to admit that you're the most monstrous cultivator I've ever seen. In just a few years, your strength has actually risen from a trash low god to the half-saint realm. Huajiushan looked coldly at Nie Tian and said cold, such a terrifying speed of advancement is absolutely unprecedented. It's just a pity that you've met this president. Today your path ends here. You probably didn't expect this, but this president has already completely opened the glazed demon pagoda. You're not the only one whose strength has skyrocketed in the past few years. Now, I'll let you witness this president's strength. Boom! Huajiushan's body shuddered as soon as he finished speaking. An extremely violent and wild power immediately surged out of his body like terrifying black divine runes. It circled around his body, turning him into a dark abyss in an instant. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly when he sensed Huajiushan's aura, and his face actually stiffened. He didn't expect Huajiushan's strength to reach such a terrifying level after coming out of seclusion. At the same time, Little Fat's voice sounded out, rank 9 half-saint. He also didn't expect Huajiushan to be able to completely open the glazed demon pagoda and break through to rank 9 half-saint. Huajiushan could have continued his seclusion and borrowed the power of the glazed demon pagoda to reach peak false saint within 100 years. However, he was too eager to unify the 9 regions, so he ended his seclusion early. However, he discovered a tragedy when he came out of seclusion. Nangong Jueming was waiting for him in the 9 regions. Nie Tian, open your eyes wide and watch. I'll kill your family and friends first and let you experience true despair. Huajiushan's face turned cold, and he said violently like a demon, you'll watch them die in front of you, and you'll be powerless to do anything about it. As he spoke, Huajiushan struck out with his palm. A wild aura whizzed out and blasted towards a stone pillar. With his current strength, as long as the shadow of his palm landed, the stone pillar would definitely crumble into powder, and the person on top of the stone pillar would die instantly. Stop! The scene before him caused Nie Tian's eyes to tremble, and he roared wildly. The 9 dragon veins in his body began to circulate wildly, and violent dragon chi soared into the sky and exploded in the void. Bang, bang, bang! In the next instant, the space confined by the 9 pupils collapsed. At the same time, a crimson golden dragon appeared behind Nie Tian. Its scales exploded, and dragon aura burst forth. Its eyes were like blazing suns, surging with raging flames of fury. Huajiushan's eyes narrowed. He clearly didn't expect Nie Tian to be able to break through his 9 imprisonment. Roar! At this moment, the giant scarlet gold dragon roared angrily at the sky, and its roar shook the heavens and earth. Its huge body tumbled, and it charged towards the 12 stone pillars. It actually used its powerful dragon body to envelop the stone pillars. Bang! In the next instant, Huajiushan's palm landed on the giant scarlet gold dragon, but it immediately crumbled. Nie Tian used all his dragon chi as a shield to protect the 12 stone pillars. Good move. Huajiushan smiled coldly, and his eyes were as sharp as killing intent. He said solemnly, I just don't know how long your dragon chi can last. Chapter 28:51. Demonic Eyes, Boom! High up in the sky, Nietion roared like a madman, but his mind was very clear. He moved and the extreme wood blue sky armor appeared around him. He then turned into a ball of green light that instantly left his body and enveloped the giant crimson dragon. He was worried that the upcoming battle would affect the crimson dragon, so he had prepared his defenses in advance. Huojushin smiled cold at this scene and said, "Nietion, you're really loyal. It's just a pity that you're too weak to protect these people." Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying aura rose from Huojushin's body and instantly filled the space within several thousand meters. It fused with the black divine patterns on his body and condensed into a gigantic black golden armor. He's already cultivated the Velurium 9 revolution technique to the 7th revolution. Fat Cat's nervous voice rang out again at this moment. Back then, Huojushin's Velurium 9 revolution technique had reached a bottleneck and was stuck at the 4th revolution. Fat Cat estimated that Huojushin would be able to break through to the half-saint realm when she reached the 5th revolution. What he never expected was that Huojushin's Velurium 9 revolution technique had already reached the 7th revolution. No wonder her strength had reached the 9th stage half-saint realm. What was even more terrifying was that Huojushin had actually fused the Velurium golden body with the power of the 9 eyes to form the Velurium golden body. At this moment, Huojushin was shrouded by a huge shadow. She stood tall in the sky like a giant, exuding a violent aura that seemed capable of destroying everything with a single hand. "Alright, I'll fight with you." Nietion glared at Huojushin. His eyes were filled with rage, but not fear. Instead, they were filled with an extreme and frenzied desire to fight. He was completely enraged at this moment. A first-stage half-saint like you won't be able to fight me." Huojushin was incomparably arrogant. She roared and moved. Her gigantic glazed 9 golden body punched downwards, causing the void to tighten and a long and narrow space-time rift to be torn open. 9 God Calamity, I'll kill you like a dog." Nietion was incomparably domineering, roaring like a mad lion. His entire body's sword intent filled the sky, and a huge sword momentum immediately appeared. Human slaughter. Just as his sword intent reached its peak, he roared and slashed out with the starlight heaven slash. Boom. Crack, crack, crack. The sword image was like a dragon, whistling through the heavens and earth. Wherever the void passed by, it actually directly split open. A violent space-time storm appeared and attacked crazily. Boom. Chi chi chi. In the void, the fist shadow and the sword shadow collided. The world shook as if it was about to be destroyed. Nietion could feel the terrifying impact. He narrowed his eyes and roared in a low voice, "Rise!" Roar. In the next moment, the gigantic golden dragon that enveloped the 12 stone pillars roared. Its huge body suddenly moved, uprooting the 12 stone pillars, protecting them as it charged into the sky. "Stinking brat, you can't even protect yourself, yet you still want to save people? Die." Upon seeing this, Huojushin let out a fierce roar. Immediately afterwards, her glassy 9 golden body punched out simultaneously. 6 streaks of dark golden light appeared in the void and shot towards Nietion like huge, sharp awls. Nietion didn't move at all, as if he hadn't seen it at all. His mind was completely focused on the gigantic golden dragon, and he was afraid that something would happen. The people on the 12 stone pillars were too weak. If they were even the slightest bit careless, they would die instantly. The 12 stone pillars floated in the sky, away from the powerful impact. Bang, bang, bang. But at this moment, the 6 terrifying rays of light descended at the same time and landed on Nietion's body. His figure was violently pushed back, leaving streaks of blood in the air. In the next moment, Nietion steadied himself. 6 glaring wounds had appeared on his body, and blood gushed out wildly. In an instant, he was completely covered in blood. Now is the time for the real battle to begin. However, he didn't seem to care at all. His murderous eyes locked onto Nine God Calamity as he spoke in a cold voice that made people shudder. At some point, Nine God Calamity saw Nietion's eyes and was shocked. Unconcealable fear appeared in his glazed golden eyes. Nietion's eyes were too strange. One was red and the other was black, as if he wanted to devour someone. In particular, his pitch-black demon eye surged with terrifying demonic energy. It was as if he was a demon king that had walked out of the abyss of demons. But he regained his composure in the next moment. He was a 9th-rank half-sage after all, and he had the 9 eyes. Why should he be afraid of a heavily injured 1st-rank half-sage? Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, Nine God Calamity's body shook violently. Her gigantic glazed golden body actually cracked inch by inch, and a pair of dark golden wings appeared on her back. A black demonic blade appeared in her hand. 9 demonic wings and 9 demonic blade. Nietion, it's time to end this. This is the first time I've used the 9 demonic blade. It's your honor to die under it. Nine God Calamity let out a low roar, and a terrifying killing intent suddenly rose from her body. 9 demonic energy appeared around her like raging waves. Each wave could topple mountains and overturn the seas, and her aura shook the heavens. It's time to end this, but the one to end it is you. Nietion spoke coldly. His eyes were cold and gloomy, and there wasn't the slightest bit of fear in them. There was only extreme killing intent, especially his demon eye. It was as black as the abyss, emotionless and emotionless. It looked down on everything and slaughtered everything. When he suddenly raised his head, his demon eye locked onto Nine God Calamity. The latter's body actually trembled, clearly frightened. How is this possible? Is this an illusion? Nine God Calamity let out a low roar in her heart. Her eyes were the 9 eyes, the 6th other pupil, so why did she feel like she was about to collapse the moment she looked into Nietion's demon eye? How could Nietion's pitch-black eye be so terrifying? Kill! But in the next moment, Nine God Calamity calmed down. She let out a low cold roar, and killing intent surged around her. How could she, the dignified sacred president, who had once been the strongest person in the 9 regions, cower in front of a junior? 9 Revolution Glass Technique, 7 Revolution Annihilation Heavens. 9 God Calamity let out a low roar and slashed down with the 9 demonic blade. A blade shadow as dark as the night appeared and fell like a waterfall. At this moment, the sky changed color, the void trembled, and everything turned dark. It was as if the entire sky and earth was sinking. Boom! Crack! 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 Wherever the gigantic devil saber passed, space shattered and exploded, and cracks appeared in the sky. Nietion wasn't afraid in the slightest in the face of 9 God Calamity's all-out attack. His eyes were cold and murderous, and in an instant, sword intent erupted from his body like a volcano. 9 starry sky limits, heavenly slash. The corner of Nietion's mouth twitched as he murmured. There wasn't the slightest bit of emotion in his eyes, but a terrifying killing intent radiated from them. It was as if he was looking down on everything and wanted to destroy everything. Boom! Crack, crack, crack. In the next instant, a sword shadow burning with terrifying flames appeared. It whistled through the sky and tore through the sky. At this moment, 9 God Calamity shuddered inexplicably, and his eyes went blank for an instant. He hadn't expected Nietion's strength to be so heaven-defying. Boom! Bang, bang, bang! Zap, 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 zap! Then, the dark blade shadow and the flaming sword shadow collided, causing the void to tremble. Waves of incomparably violent energy burst forth, but they were immediately crushed by the space-time storm and shattered. The blade shadow and sword shadow slowly sank into the space-time crack like 2 giant beasts that were about to disappear. I'm taking your eyes. At this moment, Nie Tion's demonic eye trembled and the corner of his mouth twitched. Astral soul wings appeared on his back, and he moved like a beam of light, charging straight at God Calamity. Chapter 28:52. You. Just as Nie Tion's figure flickered, Huajiushan suddenly felt an extremely murderous aura appear and envelop him. His eyes trembled and he opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't find the words. In that instant, Huajiushan felt a wave of demonic energy that seemed capable of devouring the heavens and earth appear, causing him to instantly lose control. This terrifying demonic energy was simply too terrifying, and it instantly plunged him into despair. At this moment, Nie Tion's figure descended and stretched out his hand. His 2 fingers were like the claws of an eagle, extremely sharp and murderous. In the next instant, blood splattered where his fingers had landed. Huajiushan's eyes had actually been dug out by him. My eyes. With his eyes dug out, Huajiushan let out a heart-wrenching howl as a searing pain spread through his entire body. He had never imagined that Nie Tion would be so ferocious as to rush in front of him and dig out his eyes. At this moment, Nie Tion didn't seem like a human at all. Instead, he seemed more like a berserk beast. Go to hell. Just as Huajiushan was howling in pain, Nie Tion's eyes darkened and a bone-chilling killing intent seeped out of them. With a roar, he threw a punch straight at Huajiushan's face. It was very difficult to imagine that a clash of absolute strength between 2 semi-experts would occur. Bang! There was a muffled sound as flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Half of Huajiushan's face immediately caved in, and he no longer looked human at all. His entire body was sent flying, and it was a horrifying sight to behold. However, Nie Tion didn't stop there. Instead, he moved and unfurled his wings, enveloping Huajiushan with immense power. What followed next was an even more horrifying scene. Bang! 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 Muffled sounds like metal and stone shattering rang out as Nie Tion landed blow after blow on Huajiushan's body. Huajiushan was instantly drenched in blood. Her chest, limbs, and even her head revealed her cold white bones. Nie Tion's martial body was too ferocious. It was simply like a primordial beast. Once Calamity 9's eyes were dug out, she instantly lost the ability to resist and became a human sandbag. Nie Tion was right. He had killed the 9 gods of Calamity like a dog butcher. Even in his wildest dreams, 9 gods would never imagine that he, the president of the Holy Council and a 9th-rank half-saint, would be beaten up like this. Nie Tion seemed to have gone mad. In the blink of an eye, dozens of punches landed, and Huajiushan was turned into a bloody pig head. Stop hitting me, stop hitting me, I beg you, stop hitting me! Calamity 9 hugged her head and screamed like a stray dog. Now you know how to beg for mercy? Nie Tion Tianling smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with an incomparably sharp killing intent as he said coldly, "Unfortunately, it's too late. You want me to let you go, but I won't." As soon as he finished speaking, Nie Tion's sword aura surged out and circulated around his body. It was as sharp as a blade and extremely terrifying. Die! He roared and swung the starry heavenly slash in his hand. A huge sword shadow descended from the sky like a waterfall of flowing light. The light of the sword blossomed between heaven and earth. If this sword fell, Huajiushan would die without a doubt. However, at this moment, Nie Tion suddenly sensed something. His eyes couldn't help but tremble in shock. Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying black light surged out from his palm and instantly enveloped his entire body. 9 pupils. Nie Tion suddenly realized what was going on. His face darkened as he growled. He had just dug out Calamity 9's eyes, and the 9 pupils were still in his hand. But at this moment, the 9 pupils suddenly changed. What's going on? Nie Tion was extremely shocked. His heart sank as he looked at the 9 pupils in his hand. Calamity 9 God's eyeballs didn't look like they were made of flesh and blood at all. Instead, they were a pair of black balls that were constantly releasing streams of 9-in chi like dark abysses. It was this 9-in energy that had enveloped Nye Tian. In an instant, Nye Tian felt an extremely terrifying pressure descend upon him. It was as if his entire being was going to be crushed to death. He didn't expect the 9-in pupils to still be able to release such terrifying ocular power after being dug out. At this moment, an extremely strange scene unfolded. A low roar came from Nye Tian's demonic eye like the roar of a giant ancient beast. Nye Tian's eyes suddenly froze. His expression changed as his entire body froze. In his consciousness, a giant beast that was as dark as the night appeared and roared at the sky. The giant beast of darkness seemed to be the ruler of heaven and earth. As it roared, heaven and earth shook as if it was trembling. Nye Tian felt the aura of the giant beast of darkness. The shock in his heart was at its peak. He could feel that the dark aura of the giant beast of darkness was extremely dense. It was as if it was an ancient emperor that had walked out of the abyss of darkness. That kind of dark aura made one feel despair. Roar. At that moment, the behemoth of darkness let out another roar and unleashed a terrifying, boundless power that unexpectedly absorbed all of the 9-in chi around Nye Tian in the blink of an eye. Everything returned to normal. However, the pair of 9-in pupils in Nye Tian's hand had strangely disappeared. QL 11-inch this. Nye Tian stood rooted to the ground and sucked in a breath of cold air. His expression was blank. He could not believe that the giant beast of darkness that appeared in the demon eye had actually devoured the 9-in pupils. The 9-in pupils was ranked 6th among the 10 great Khanate pupils, but now it had been devoured by the demon eye. What was going on? The shock in Nye Tian's heart was clearly written on his face, which was filled with astonishment. This kind of thing was completely out of his expectations. Nye Tian, that guy escaped. Just at this moment, little fat cat's voice suddenly rang out, crying out in alarm. Nye Tian suddenly reacted. Only then did he realize that Huojiushen's figure had already disappeared. Damn it! Nye Tian let out a bellow, the look in his eyes incomparably cold. That guy's 9-in pupils have been destroyed by you. He's already useless. Don't worry about him. Save him first, Fat Cat spoke again. Nye Tian nodded. Yeah. Then, he blurred into action and arrived by the side of the 12 stone columns. He was worried that someone would come, so he carefully placed the 12 stone pillars into the 9 extremities. Let's leave first. After doing this, Nye Tian did not see Nangong Jueming's figure. He thought for a moment and prepared to leave. He really wanted to take revenge, but saving people was more important. He would definitely take Nangong Jueming's head. There was no need to rush now. Following this, he moved and prepared to leave. Kid with the fiend god nascent embryo, do you think you can leave? However, at this moment, a low murderous voice rang out. After that, a silhouette appeared, standing tall in the air. The aura around him surged, akin to raging waves crashing about. Chapter 2853. Just as Nye Tian was about to leave, a silhouette appeared behind him. This silhouette was none other than the ancestor of the Nangong clan, Nangong Jueming. Nye Tian's eyes were filled with killing intent as he shouted out Nangong Jueming's name word by word. He was about to leave, but Nangong Jueming had appeared at this moment. Kid from the Nye clan, you really showed up. Nangong Jueming's eyes were filled with coldness and killing intent. Terrifying purple lightning circulated around his body. It was incomparably violent, like a wild purple snake. It enveloped his entire body, making him look like the purple thunder god. Nangong Jueming, you despicable man! Nye Tian swallowed and roared furiously. His entire body was trembling and his eyes were bloodshot. He wished he could skin Nangong Jueming alive. Hua Yiru and Nangong Jueming had agreed that the Nangong clan would not attack the Nye clan within 3 months. However, Nangong Jueming had gone back on his words and attacked the Nye clan. QL 11-inch despicable? Nangong Jueming smiled coldly. His eyes were filled with disdain as if the word was not an insult, but a compliment. The corner of his mouth twitched as he said, "You said I am despicable because you are weaker than me. Even if you come back now, you won't be able to change anything. You will only lose your life." "Is that so?" With a cold laugh, Nye Tian was wreathed in raging battle intent and sword intent. Like a huge sword, he floated in midair. When Nangong Jueming sensed Nye Tian's aura, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes, and he couldn't conceal the shock in his heart. Obviously, he didn't expect that Nye Tian had actually grown to the first step of the half-saint realm in just 3 months. Nye Tian had not even reached the peak of the immortal realm 3 months ago. Ordinary martial artists would need decades or even centuries to advance from the God realm peak to the half-life realm, even if they were extremely talented. However, Nye Tian had only used a few months to reach the half-saint realm. Such a terrifying rate of advancement could be said to be unprecedented. Nangong Jueming had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and had seen countless geniuses. However, not a single one of them could be mentioned in the same breath as Nye Tian. Although he was shocked by Nye Tian's shocking talent, Nangong Jueming calmed down in the next moment. A cold, killing intent surged in his eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Nye Tian, I haven't seen you for 3 months, and your strength has risen to such a terrifying level that it has amazed me. I have to say, you are indeed a terrifying genius. Unfortunately, your opponent is me. With my current strength, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter if you're a first-rank half-saint or a 9th-rank half-saint." His voice was calm, but it sounded very arrogant. Obviously, Nangong Jueming did not put Nye Tian in his eyes at all. In his eyes, it didn't matter whether Nye Tian was a God realm martial artist or a half-saint martial artist. The outcome would be the same, he would be instantly killed by him. At the moment, Nangong Jueming was already a 4th-rank demi-saint. Instantly killing a 1st-rank half-saint was a piece of cake for him. More importantly, Nangong Jueming still had a terrifying trump card. "Is that so?" Nye Tianling smiled coldly. There was no fear in his eyes, only the sharpest killing intent. "Brat, you only have one chance. Treasure it." Nangong Jueming smiled disdainfully and said in a cold voice. As soon as he finished speaking, the purple lightning around him became even more violent. His aura soared into the sky and spread out in the surrounding space, forming a giant purple lightning net. "Kill!" Nye Tian was not afraid at all when he saw this scene. He roared, and the sword intent in his body instantly burst out. The sword light shot out tens of thousands of meters as he slashed out with the starry heavenly slash. Hum! High up in the sky, a clear and intense sword cry resounded. Suddenly, a sharp sword aura burst out as if it wanted to tear the world apart. Boom! In the next moment, a crazy sword shadow appeared. It was over 10,000 meters long and whistled through the sky like a terrifying dragon. The sword shadow was burning with chaotic flames. The terrifying fiend god aura surged like the radiance of a falling star. For this sword, Nye Tian had used the 3rd limit of the Starry Sky 9 limits, the Heavenly Slash. He had also used the fiend god's sword intent and the power of the chaotic flames. He had pushed the strength of his sword to the limit. The power of this sword could even kill an ordinary 9th-rank half-saint if they faced it head-on. Is that all? Facing Nye Tian's sword, Nangong Jueming only smiled faintly. His eyes were cold and disdainful as he stood there without moving. Boom! Bang bang bang! In the next moment, the terrifying sword shadows fell and bombarded the lightning giant net. The power of the purple lightning was instantly stimulated, and the purple lightning bombarded the sword shadows and actually shattered them. From the beginning to the end, Nangong Jueming's figure did not move at all. He was like a mountain, majestic and boundless. Nye Tian's talent was amazing, but his strength was too weak. A first-rank half-saint against a fourth-rank demi-saint. The difference between them was like the difference between heaven and earth, and no talent could make up for it. Damn it! Nye Tian steadied himself and growled with murderous intent in his eyes. His forehead was full of cold sweat, and his face was pale. Fiend god nascent embryo, I have to admit that you are indeed a shocking genius. Nangong Jueming looked at Nye Tian with the corner of his mouth twitching. His eyes were filled with mockery as he smiled coldly. However, in the face of absolute strength, no matter how monstrous your talent is, it is useless. Now its eyes turn. One move is all it takes to kill you. Kid, watch carefully. I will use the power of your Nye family to kill you. As he finished speaking, Nangong Jueming's body trembled, and the lightning net around him disappeared. Then, rays of golden light appeared around his body. It was blinding and dazzling as it shone between heaven and earth. This is... Nye Tian looked at Nangong Jueming. His eyes suddenly froze as he spat out 3 words. Spirit sealing power. That's right. The power that Nangong Jueming was displaying was spirit sealing power. Nye Tian had never thought that Nangong Jueming could actually use spirit sealing power. Kid, do you want to know where I got his spirit sealing power from? Nangong Jueming saw the shock on Nye Tian's face and became even more arrogant. He said coldly, let me tell you. I's spirit sealing power came from your grandfather, the leader of the Wind and Cloud Alliance, Nye Dao. Nangong Jueming's spirit sealing power actually came from Nye Dao. 3 months ago, Nangong Jueming had swindled the spirit sealing power from Nye Dao. During this period of time, he had been fusing with the spirit sealing power, which was why he had not appeared. Just now, he had just finished fusing with the spirit sealing power. Now, he wanted to use the spirit sealing power to kill Nye Tian. Using the bloodline power of the Nye family to kill the most monstrous martial artist of the Nye family, Nangong Jueming had a perverted sense of satisfaction. Son of a bitch! Nye Tian's eyes trembled, and then he let out a roar like a frenzied beast. Chapter 2854. Chapter 2849. Chapter 2, 849. A bloody battle boom. High up in the sky, Nangong Jueming's body shuddered as the god-sealing power around him grew violent. In the blink of an eye, it morphed into numerous streaks of golden light that whizzed towards Nye Tian. The god-sealing force was something that Nangong Jueming had plundered from Nye Dao. However, his strength far surpassed Nye Dao's. Therefore, the power that the god-sealing force could unleash was far more terrifying than Nye Dao's. Hua, hua, hua. In the blink of an eye, the sky full of god-sealing power descended like a golden rain of arrows, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The void began to tremble, as though it would collapse at any moment. Nye Tian's eyes trembled as he activated the extreme wood jade sky battle armor. At the same time, the Star Soul armor and Star Soul shield appeared as well, turning into layers of protective shields that covered his body. Bang bang bang. In the next instant, the rays of light descended and bombarded the 3 layers of protective shield. Bang! Bang! In the blink of an eye, the 3 layers of protective shields were shattered. Bang! A dull sound rang out in the sky. Nye Tian's body was sent flying, drowning in the golden rays. Humph! Nangong Jueming smirked and said in disdain, Ant. He didn't even use his full strength in the previous attack, and it killed Nye Tian. However, before he could finish speaking, his disdainful face suddenly froze. Old pig, who are you calling an ant? In the void, a low and cold voice rang out. Following that, a blood-colored figure appeared. His body was covered in blood, but his eyes were extremely sharp. He's not dead? Nangong Jueming frowned. His stiff old face revealed an even colder smile. He clearly didn't expect that Nye Tian didn't die from his attack. Although he didn't use his full strength in the previous attack, even a 9th-level half-saint might not be able to withstand it. Nie Tian's strength was obviously only at the first rank of the half-saint realm, yet he was still alive, which greatly surprised him. Old pig dog, your strength is only SOSO. Nie Tianling laughed coldly. After which, he released his aura, which was several times more terrifying than before. How is this possible? Nangong Jueming felt the aura around Nie Tian and his expression became even more shocked. He couldn't understand why Nie Tian's aura could suddenly skyrocket in an instant. Judging from Nie Tian's aura, he was no weaker than a demi-saint. But how was this possible? Nie Tian was clearly just a first-order half-saint. At this moment, Nangong Jueming felt that within Nie Tian's body, there is an extremely terrifying power surging, incessantly stimulating his martial body, exploding out with even more tyrannical power. Old pig dog, pay for what you did to my family. That was when Nie Tian bellowed. His figure moved, the sword will over his body reaching its limit as he slashed out, pressing straight at Nangong Jueming. Boom! Croc croc croc. The sword silhouette was so terrifying that space would be directly torn apart wherever it passed. A dark dimensional rift appeared in the void, as if a behemoth had opened its mouth to devour everything. At the moment, Nie Tian's martial body was approaching its limit. Just now, he had consumed the star soul pellet that Huairu had given him. It was the eruption of the star soul pellet that temporarily activated the power of the stars and unsealed the second star scar. At the moment, Nie Tian's combat ability was approaching that of a demi-saint. Moreover, the aura around his body was still skyrocketing wildly. Interesting. Nangong Jueming glanced at Nie Tian and laughed. Then, he forcefully slapped out with his palm. God-binding power condensed into a giant golden palm that descended like a mountain, pressing down upon the void. Boom! 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 In the very next instant, the palm and the sword collided, causing the void to tremble and explode even more violently. Both the sword silhouette and the palm silhouette were simultaneously struck by the dimensional storm and shattered. Nie Tian's figure was struck and immediately retreated. After he steadied himself, a trickle of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Nangong Jueming was too powerful. Even if Nie Tian had consumed the star soul pellet, he still could not stand against him directly. Nie Tian, you are certainly an extraordinary martial artist. After a moment, the dimensional rift in the skies above vanished, and Nangong Jueming's cold laughter rang. But unfortunately, your opponent is me. Even if the power in your body exceeds I's expectations, it would not change the outcome. All it would do is prolong your feeble existence for a little longer. Now die. As he spoke, Nangong Jueming's aura gushed forth as the god-sealing energy within his body frenziedly gushed forth. An incomparably tyrannical suppressive force gushed forth like a tsunami, crazily pressing down on Nie Tian. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The terrifying god-sealing energy howled in the air, violently gushing towards Nie Tian. Triple saintly defiance, Earth sword engulfs the moon. Facing Nangong Jueming's all-out attack, Nie Tian actually didn't even bother to dodge. Instead, he directly rushed forward. The fiend god's sword intent around him gushed forth, exuding a majestic sword might that was extremely terrifying. Rumble! Chi chi chi! In the next instant, the sword silhouette directly collided with the god-sealing energy, causing terrifying rumbling sounds to echo out unceasingly in the air. Crack, crack, crack. The fearsome waves of energy gushed forth, causing the space to crumble once again. A violent dimensional storm appeared, slamming into the air. Facing such a terrifying attack, Nie Tian actually didn't retreat. Instead, a pair of astral soul wings appeared behind his back. With a flap of his wings, his silhouette transformed into a beam of light as he directly rushed forward. Courting death. Seeing this scene, Nangong Jueming's countenance sank. With a cold laugh, he blasted out another palm strike. Boom! The palm silhouette was like a mountain, golden light scattered in all directions, directly pressing down on Nietian. However, at this moment, Nietian's entire body was surging with astral energy. This kind of energy was extremely violent, crazily churning, as though it was about to ignite. At this moment, under the stimulation of the astral soul pill, the seal of the second astral mark of the astral energy had already been broken. Every single strand of astral energy increased by several folds. However, such a terrifying power also came with a huge price. After all, Nietian only had the strength of a first-step half-saint. Bearing such a terrifying astral energy was a huge burden to his martial body. At this moment, the violent energy gushed through his body. In addition to the violent waves of energy in the surrounding space, Nietian's body actually started to split apart bit by bit. Numerous bloody wounds appeared, causing his entire body to instantly become covered in blood. However, he didn't care about it at all. With a tyrannical astral heavenly slash, he actually used the strongest move of the forbidden 3 moves of the proud sword art, blood devouring the heavens. Boom! In the turbid space, a blood-colored sword silhouette soared up to the sky like a mad dragon, violently attacking. Boom! Bang bang bang! In the next moment, the blood-colored sword silhouette and the golden palm collided, causing the entire space to tremble. Following which, 2 terrifying forces actually exploded at the same time. The terrifying power crazily wreaked havoc in the space. Nietian and Nangong Jueming's silhouettes were completely engulfed by the raging wave. Voila! At this moment, the sound of iron chains suddenly resounded in the air. Chapter 2855. Ultimate Sword. High up in the sky, a powerful force wreaked havoc. The heavens and earth were in chaos, as if doomsday had arrived. After a long while, the rumbling turbid waves dissipated and 2 figures appeared in the sky. It was Nietian and Nangong Jueming. The 2 of them stood high up in the sky, one as sharp as a sword, the other as majestic as a mountain. However, at this moment, Nietian's body was covered in blood. His body was covered in wounds and his white bones could be seen. The power of the stars in his body was too violent. It was too much for his martial body to withstand such power. On the other side, Nangong Jueming's figure stood tall. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were gloomy and he was furious. He had never expected that Nietian would be able to injure him. In the crazy battle just now, Nietian had used the bone-eroding soul shackling chain to injure Nangong Jueming. Although this attack was not fatal and Nangong Jueming could not care less about it, it was only a slight injury. However, this slight injury completely enraged Nangong Jueming. A mere first-rank half-saint was actually able to injure him, and this was an enormous humiliation to him. Nietian, you have angered I. Nangong Jueming's body trembled slightly. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he spoke. Nangong Jueming, you have angered me too. Nietian took a step forward. Although his body was covered in blood, there was no fear in his eyes. He let out a roar and the killing intent in his body solidified. You're courting death. Nangong Jueming roared. Brat, I have indeed underestimated you. But how much longer can your blood flow? Before my blood runs dry, you will be a corpse. Nie Tianling replied coldly. His eyes were terrifying. Arrogant. Nangong Jueming's roar was like thunder. After that, his body trembled as violet lightning gushed out from his body. Countless bolts of violet lightning danced in the air, extending for tens of thousands of meters, causing the space he was in to become a sea of violet lightning. 9 roars of purple thunder. Nie Tian's eyes trembled when he saw this. Nangong Jueming's most terrifying trump card was his lightning origin power, the purple thunder 9 roars. He was a martialist who had fused with the complete purple thunder 9 howls. Coupled with his terrifying strength, the power that the purple thunder 9 howls could unleash was terrifying. Kid, you're honored to be able to witness Ai's true strength very soon. Nangong Jueming's gaze was bone-chilling. A strange smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. After that, the god-sealing energy started to surge out from his body. In the next moment, a strange scene occurred. The power of the purple lightning merged with the god-sealing power, forming a layer of golden light around the purple lightning. When Nye Tian saw this scene and felt the aura of the purple lightning, his eyes couldn't help but tremble. After fusing with the god-sealing power, the 9 roars of purple thunder had not only become more violent, but its aura had also become more majestic. Nye Tian, you didn't expect this, did you? I has already fused the 9 roars of purple thunder and the god-sealing power perfectly. Nangong Jueming laughed wildly, his eyes filled with insufferably arrogant madness. Nye Tian's eyes trembled slightly. He really did not expect Nangong Jueming to be able to fuse the 9 roars of purple thunder and the god-sealing power together. Although Nangong Jueming was only a level 4 demi-saint, his combat strength was stronger than a level 5 or even a level 6 demi-saint. Die obediently. When Nangong Jueming saw Nye Tian's shocked expression, he instantly became even more arrogant. He roared like thunder, and the purple lightning around his body became even more violent. Streaks of purple lightning struck the void, as though it was going to destroy the heaven and earth. Lulu. At this moment, Nye Tian's eyes focused and he growled. Nye Tian, what are you trying to do? Liolio's voice was heard, and he sounded very panicked. I need more power. Nye Tian's eyes were extremely firm as he said cold. Are you crazy? Lulu screamed. Of course, he knew that Nye Tian wanted him to activate the Holy Soul Curse again. Previously, he had activated the Holy Soul Curse several times to help Nye Tian increase his combat strength. However, the Holy Soul Curse was a dangerous thing, and once it went out of control, the consequences would be dire. At the most crucial moment, Nye Tian's martial physique was already at its limit. If he activated the Holy Soul Curse again, could he withstand it? Nye Tian, you can't withstand it. Your martial physique is already at its limit. If you activate the Holy Soul Curse again, your body will explode and you will die. Lulu shouted anxiously. Do it. However, Nye Tian did not seem to hear Liolio's words and roared. His martial body was indeed close to its limit, but his current strength was still too weak. It was simply not enough to contend against Nangong Jueming. At this moment, he had no other choice but to take the risk and fight with his life on the line. Die for me. At this moment, Nangong Jueming roared out and attacked. Within the void, 9 bolts of purple lightning roared out. Each of them was tens of thousands of meters long, stretching out in the space like tentacles that could tear apart the void with a wave of their hand. This kind of power was too terrifying. It was not something that Nye Tian could contend against. If the 9 purple lightning bolts descended, Nye Tian would definitely be blasted into smithereens. Boom! Boom! High up in the sky, purple lightning whistled, violent and vast, pressing down on Nye Tian. In an instant, he was already on the verge of death. Lulu! Nye Tian's eyes trembled and he roared like a wild beast. Motherf *Ker, fight! In an instant, Lulu had no time to think. He screamed and made up his mind. On Nye Tian's forehead, a white light shone. Then, the Holy Soul Curse in his body suddenly became violent, turning into a terrifying force that forced his martial body to release even more terrifying power. Boom! At this moment, Nye Tian's body released an extremely terrifying sword force that surged in the air. It was as vast as a mountain and as sharp as the wind. 9 limits of starry sky, heaven slash! Suddenly feeling his body's chi reaching its limit, Nye Tian roared and slashed out with his starry sky slash. Boom! In the next instant, a sword shadow over 20,000 meters long appeared and shot into the sky, attacking the 9 purple lightning bolt. Bang! 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 The sword's shadow whistled, and its chi shook the sky and the earth. The space within 10,000 meters was filled with the blinding light of the sword. When the sword's shadow landed on the 9 purple lightning bolts, a muffled explosion sound was heard. The 9 purple lightning bolts were actually cut in half. The power of this sword was beyond imagination. It actually cut the 9 purple lightning bolts in half. How? The shocking scene made Nangong Juming scream. The fear in his eyes reached its peak. He never thought that Nie Tian would actually explode with such a terrifying sword under his extreme condition. The power of this sword was something that even the 9 roars of purple thunder combined with the god's sealing force could not resist. Bang! In the next second, the sword's shadow arrived and heavily landed on Nangong Juming's body. A muffled sound was heard and a bloody trail appeared in the sky. At the same time, Nie Tian let out an incomparably shrill and miserable howl. Bang! 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 On his body, many bloody wounds appeared and blood gushed out like fountains. It was extremely terrifying. Chapter 2856. The power of the heavenly Tao. High up in the sky, Nie Tian let out a heart-wrenching howl as the excruciating pain coursed through his entire body. Waves of berserk energy were wreaking havoc within his body. They were actually trying to forcefully tear his body apart. Oh no! At this moment, Fat Cat, the Ghost Emperor, and Liolio's voices rang out at the same time. They could already sense that Nie Tian's martial body had broken through its limits and could no longer hold on. The power of the Star Soul Pill had already pushed Nie Tian to his limits. In this state, Lulu had activated the power of the Sacred Soul Curse Mark, and Nie Tian's martial body could not withstand it at all. Even though Nie Tian had the support of the 9 dragon veins, he could not withstand the terrifying power at this moment. In the next instant, streams of wild energy rushed out of his body, and Nie Tian's body was torn apart. His flesh was torn apart, and his white bones were exposed. This was the most violent power, and no will could resist it. Ha, go to hell! At this moment, a shrill roar came from the void. Boom! Immediately, a figure appeared and struck out with a palm. Instantly, a terrifying power tore through the air and blasted toward Nie Tian. Misfortune! Nie Tian blurted out as he fixed his bloodshot eyes on 9 Deity Hua, who was standing under the dark red shield. Misfortune! This figure that had suddenly appeared was none other than Calamity 9. This fellow had not left, but had been hiding in the void all this time. He was waiting for an opportune moment to kill Nie Tian on the spot. At this moment, Nie Tian's power was out of control, and it was the best time for him to strike. Ha! Calamity 9 struck out with a palm and laughed wildly. His face became twisted and hideous like a malicious spirit. Being able to kill Nie Tian with his own hands gave him an indescribable sense of satisfaction. Nie Tian, hurry up and take out the heavenly sacred heart. In this moment of life and death, the fat cat's voice suddenly rang out, urgently shouting. Nie Tian's body was torn apart, but his consciousness was still clear. After hearing the fat cat's voice, he endured the intense pain, and with a thought, the heavenly sacred heart appeared in his palm. Lulu! The fat cat let out a loud cry. It immediately came out and grabbed the heavenly sacred heart with its paw. What is this? Lulu exclaimed. He didn't know what the fat cat was trying to do. Activate the power of the heavenly sacred heart. The fat cat did not explain but shouted. Yes. Lulu agreed. Then, a white halo appeared on Nie Tian's forehead, directly attacking the heavenly sacred heart. Boom! The heavenly Tao sacred heart felt the impact and immediately released a vast energy that instantly enveloped Nie Tian. Bam! At this moment, Huojiushan's palm landed and bombarded the shield formed by the power of the heavenly Tao. It actually shattered. The next moment, waves of power of the heavenly Tao surged into Nie Tian's body. It was vast and boundless, but like a silent spring rain, it nourished Nie Tian's body. In the blink of an eye, the open wounds on Nie Tian's body actually began to heal. The power of the heavenly Tao is working. The fat cat saw this and shouted in surprise. It turned out that in this moment of life and death, the fat cat suddenly remembered that Nie Tian had the tear of the princess in his body. As long as the heavenly sacred heart's power of the heavenly Tao was activated, it might be able to save Nie Tian. The heavenly sacred heart believed that the owner of the tear of the princess was the master of the heavenly Tao. Therefore, there was a strong resonance between the power of the heavenly Tao and the tear of the princess. The power of the heavenly Tao's resonance was enough to instantly heal Nie Tian's wounds. How is this possible? Hua Jiushen's voice trembled as he stared at the extremely strange scene in front of him. His eyes were glazed over as if he had become a fool. Die, Hua Jiushen! At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly roared. His figure moved, and the long sword in his hand slashed through the air. The moment the sword fell, it left a line of blood in the air. Hua Jiushen felt a chill on his neck, and then hot blood gushed out. I. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but he no longer had the chance. His eyes trembled, and his life force rapidly disappeared. In the next moment, his body began to fall like a fallen leaf, falling soundlessly. At this moment, Nie Tian's figure moved, and he stretched out his hand. A violent suction force howled out, and Hua Jiushen's body froze in the air. Then, it exploded and turned into a bloody light. Hua Jiushen, the president of the Holy Parliament and the former strongest expert of the 9 regions, died just like that. He had a chance to leave, but he didn't. He could only blame himself for ending up like this. A tower formed from glazed light floated in the air. It was the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Glazed Demon Pagoda! Fat Cat couldn't help but cry out in surprise when he saw the Glazed Demon Pagoda. Nie Tian's gaze trembled slightly. Then, he moved and stored the Glazed Demon Pagoda into the 9 extremities. Then, he steadied himself and stood on the spot with an extremely shocked expression. At this moment, his body was undergoing a strange and shocking transformation. Waves of heavenly energy surged within his body, and the wounds on his body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. After a while, Nie Tian's body had completely recovered. Even his condition had recovered. What powerful heavenly Tao energy! Lulu and the Ghost Emperor were stunned by the transformation on Nie Tian's body, and they exclaimed in unison. Nie Tian's injuries were so severe just now, and he had almost used up all his strength. But with the help of heavenly Tao energy, he had instantly recovered. The power of heavenly Tao energy was unimaginable. Nie Tian's body recovered in an instant, and he was stunned as if he had just had a nightmare. In that instant, he had experienced the edge of life and death. That kind of understanding between life and death was indescribable. What confused him even more was the fact that the heavenly sacred heart contained such a terrifying power. Nie Tian, are you all right? Fat Cat looked at Nie Tian and let out a long breath, as if worried. I'm fine. Nie Tian recovered from the huge shock and said in a low voice. Fat Cat sensed Nie Tian's body, and only relaxed after finding no abnormalities. His figure moved and he returned to the origin fetus space. Nie Tian had absorbed some heavenly Tao energy in his critical state, and he didn't know what kind of effect it would have on his martial body. At that moment, on the other side of the void, a shocked voice could be heard. Nangong Jueming looked at Nie Tian from afar, and his old face was extremely shocked. He trembled for a long time, and then he growled, "This is impossible." He had seen with his own eyes that Nie Tian's body had been completely torn apart, but in the blink of an eye it had healed. Moreover, Nie Tian's strength had recovered. This scene was too strange. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. What was that white ball of light that Nie Tian had just taken out? Chapter 2857. Killing Nangong. Nie Tian looked at Nangong Jueming. His eyes were as cold as ice. His sharp murderous aura enveloped Nangong Jueming. In an instant, Nangong Jueming felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He felt like he was suffocating. Nie Tian's attack just now had seriously injured him. He had never thought that Nie Tian would be able to explode with such terrifying power at the moment of life and death. Especially the heavenly sacred heart, he could not imagine what it was at all. Nie Tian's body had been torn apart. How could he recover in an instant? The power contained in the heavenly sacred heart was unimaginable. At this moment, Nie Tian had recovered to his peak condition. It was extremely terrifying. Pay for my Nie clan's death. At this moment, Nie Tian's eyes flashed with coldness. After that, he moved. The starlight heavenly slash in his hand drew a sharp arc in the air. A sword shadow whizzed out, and like a raging dragon, it shot towards Nangong Jueming. Nangong Jueming felt the space in front of him tighten. Suddenly, a terrifying aura of death appeared. In the blink of an eye, a suffocating pressure came, followed by a violent and vigorous sword will. At this moment of crisis, Nangong Jueming's eyes trembled, and he struck out with his palm. Kaboom! In the sky, a purple lightning appeared. Like a violent hurricane, it extended for tens of thousands of meters and attacked the sword shadow in the sky. Kaboom! The next moment, the purple lightning hit the sword shadow. A thunderous explosion sounded in the sky. Then, the purple lightning and the huge sword shadow started to crumble at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the purple thunderbolt and the gigantic sword shadow exploded. Rolling waves surged in the void, rolling and raging. Nie Tian and Nangong Jueming moved at the same time and retreated thousands of meters. After Nangong Jueming steadied himself, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as paper. His current condition was like an arrow at the end of its flight. In addition, Nie Tian's attack had severely injured him and caused great damage to his martial body. Humph humph, Nangong Jueming, is this all you've got? Nie Tianling laughed. His laughter was cold and mocking. He took a step forward, and his body was like a sharp giant sword, extremely powerful. Nangong Jueming's old face was pale and embarrassed. He never thought that the trash that he did not put in his eyes at all could actually beat him to this state. Worst of all, Nie Tian's current condition was like the sun at high noon, and his strength completely suppressed him. Nie Tian, let's stop here. After thinking for a while, Nangong Jueming's gaze darkened, and he said, "Do you think that's possible?" Nie Tianling laughed and said domineeringly, "If I don't kill you, how can I face the people of the Nie family who died tragically?" Boom! The moment he said that, Nie Tian took a step forward and slashed with his sword. The sword's shadow roared in the air and rolled over. Nangong Jueming's eyes trembled slightly. His body shook, and the purple thunder 9 roars surged out from his body. Terrifying purple thunder surged out in the air, and instantly formed a giant purple thunder net. Boom! In the next moment, the sword shadow landed on the giant purple thunder net, and Nangong Jueming's body was sent flying. He was severely injured. Every time he operated his Yuan meridian, it was a great burden to his martial body. Even though he had activated the purple thunder defense with all his strength, he could only barely block Nie Tian's sword. Nangong Jueming, aren't you very strong? Let's see how long you can last. Nie Tian roared, and he laughed coldly. Then, he stabbed with his sword a few more times. Boom! Boom! The sword's shadow was extremely violent, and when it landed on the giant purple thunder net, a terrifying explosion was heard. The huge net of purple lightning was instantly cut in half. At this moment, Nie Tian's star soul elixir still remained in his body, and the holy soul curse mark was extremely violent. Most importantly, with the support of the heavenly way, his martial body had reached an unprecedented level of terror. Therefore, he could fight against Nangong Jueming at his peak. Nangong Jueming was severely injured, and he could not fight against Nie Tian. Die. A ferocious roar rang out in the air, followed by a series of sword shadows raining down from the sky. The giant purple thunder net around Nangong Ju-ming was instantly smashed, and it was on the verge of collapse. As for Nangong Ju-ming, he was like a small boat in a vast ocean, and he was already on the verge of destruction. The last sword, I will take your life. Nie Tianling stood in the air, and his eyes were cold. He roared, and the sword intent in his body rose to the extreme. He struck with his sword, and suddenly, a sword shadow that was more than 10,000 meters long appeared, and it pressed down on Nangong Ju-ming. No. Nangong Ju-ming's cold eyes trembled, and his old face was filled with extreme shock. He let out a shrill cry. He could feel Nie Tian's strong killing intent. Obviously, when this sword fell, it would take his life. However, at this moment, Nie Tian's eyes were cold, and his killing intent was extremely heavy. There was not the slightest emotion in his eyes, and he looked like a ferocious beast. Nangong Ju-ming had destroyed the Nie family. If he didn't kill this person, how could he appease the anger in his heart? At the moment of life and death, Nangong Ju-ming suddenly exclaimed, Nie Tian, the Nie clan's people aren't dead. Hearing Nangong Ju-ming's words, Nie Tian's eyes trembled, and he shouted, What did you say? At this moment, he wanted to stop, but it was too late. Nangong Ju-ming's expression was aghast, and his eyes instantly filled with despair. He could smell the scent of death in the air. At this moment, he started to regret that he had lied to destroy the Nie family. The Nie family had not been destroyed. Nangong Ju-ming had indeed acted against the Nie family in advance, and wanted to destroy the entire Nie family. However, Nie Dao had moved every one of the Nie family to the Nie family's ancestral land. In the end, he could only capture Nie Dao and the rest to vent the anger in his heart. In order to intimidate the outside world, he announced to the public that he had destroyed the Nie family. And now, he started to regret it. It was this news that completely infuriated Nie Tian, and caused Nie Tian to kill his way to the Wind and Cloud Alliance. At this moment, even he was going to die in the hands of Nie Tian. At the last moment before his death, Nangong Ju-ming was filled with regret. However, it was a pity that it was all too late. Boom! The sword's shadow was like a mountain, and it suddenly fell. Under the endless sword light, Nangong Ju-ming's figure was completely submerged, and not even his bones were left. Nangong Ju-ming, the ancestor of the Nangong family, a peak expert who had returned to the 9 regions, died just like that. He never dreamed that he would die in the hands of Nie Tian. However, who would believe that a level 1 half-saint could kill a level 4 demi-saint? Nie Tian killed Nangong Ju-ming with a single sword, but he was stunned on the spot. Were the words that Nangong Ju-ming said before his death true? Could it be that the Nie family was not destroyed? Chapter 2858. Bloodline Seal. As soon as Nie Tian's roar echoed out, 4 figures appeared high up in the sky. The 4 were no strangers. They were the 4 experts of the ancient Ming race. Heaven and Earth duo, 7 kills with the killing form, and Lian Jiufeng with the evil form. It's you. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw the 4 figures. He said solemnly, You didn't leave. He did not think that the 4 would not leave after he defeated them. Instead, they had been hiding in the sky all this time. It was obvious that the 4 had not just arrived. They had been hiding all this time and had seen everything. At this moment, the 4 were extremely shocked. Their eyes were trembling slightly. They had seen with their own eyes how Nie Tian had killed Nangong Ju-ming. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would not have believed that Nie Tian had killed Nangong Ju-ming. At first, the 4 had thought that Nie Tian had come looking for Nangong Ju-ming to die. The outcome in front of them was something they had never expected. Nie Tian was too terrifying. He had killed a rank 4 demigod saint with the strength of a rank 1 half-saint. In terms of strength that surpassed the god realm, To be able to skip levels like this was simply more freakish than anything else. However, they could also tell that Nye Tian had a lot of unimaginable power hidden inside of him. Especially the Heavenly Law Sacred Heart. It was too powerful. 7 kills and Lai Yen Jiufeng could feel that the power of the Heavenly Law Sacred Heart was even greater than the Emperor of the Netherworld's heaven-punishing demon heart. Nye Tian. At this moment, Lai Yen Jiufeng took a step forward. His eyes trembled slightly as he said solemnly, "We need your help." At this moment, he was no longer as arrogant as before. Instead, he was showing unprecedented respect. Nye Tian's current strength made him need to be respectful. Before, Lai Yen Jiufeng had looked at Nye Tian in a different light. One could even say that he was wary of him. However, he had always felt that Nye Tian was a martial artist on the same level as him. In fact, Nye Tian was weaker than him most of the time. However, at this moment, in the face of such a terrifying Nye Tian, he no longer had the will to fight. Nye Tian was too powerful. He was far from being able to compete with him. "You need my help?" Nye Tianling laughed and said in a deep voice, "Why should I help you?" At this moment, the power of the Star Soul Elixir in his body began to slowly recede, the Saint's Soul Curse Mark also slowly recovered, and even the power of the Heavenly Tao quietly disappeared. His aura weakened and returned to its original state. Lai Yen Jiufeng and the others noticed this, but they still maintained a respectful attitude. Because even if Nye Tian's aura had weakened, they were still far from being a match for him. Lai Yen Jiufeng frowned and stared at Nye Tian darkly. "If the Emperor of the Underworld doesn't revive, Her Highness will be in danger as well. Don't you care?" "I care." Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "But I have my own way to save Cher. There is no need for you to worry." "You?" Lai Yen Jiufeng's eyes darkened, and his expression turned ugly. Nye Tian, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face. At this moment, he could rescue Shui from this inescapable net at any time. Moreover, he believed that if he gave the Heavenly Law Sacred Heart to Cher, she would definitely be able to escape the Emperor of the Underworld's control. Nye Tian's expression turned cold, and he said no more. Then, he carefully took out the 12 stone pillars from the 9 extreme treasures. Nye Tian's expression darkened when he saw the terrible scene before him once more. He felt that killing Nangong Jueming just now was letting him off too easily. Next, Nye Tian saved everyone from the stone pillars, treated them one by one, and stabilized their auras. Half a day later, he was finally done. His forehead was covered in sweat. However, he discovered that everyone's Yuan meridians had been completely destroyed, and it was done using an extremely strange method. Normal methods could not restore them. Most of these martial practitioners had lived for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. If he could not restore their Yuan meridians, they would not live for long. Nye Tian frowned and had everyone enter the Wind and Cloud Great Hall first. He could not restore their Yuan meridians right now. He could only think of a way later. Once he returned to the Sacred Soul region, he would find Huairu. The latter should have a way. "Nye Tian, I did not think that you would actually kill Nangong Jueming." Inside the Wind and Cloud Great Hall, Nye Dao looked at Nye Tian with tears in his eyes. He felt like he was dreaming. Everyone else was just as shocked. They had only heard from Nye Tian that Nangong Jueming was dead. Although Nye Tian had said it casually, everyone could guess that a terrible battle must have happened between Nye Tian and Nangong Jueming. It was hard to imagine how Nye Tian had killed Nangong Jueming. Grandfather, before Nangong Jueming died, he said that he did not destroy the Nye family. Is that true? Nye Tian asked Nye Dao after the latter had calmed down. He was a little worried that Nangong Jueming had lied in order to save his life. Yes. At this time, Nye Dao nodded his head. The corner of his mouth rose into a faint smile. The Nye family is indeed still alive. They were not exterminated by Nangong Jueming. Really? Nie Tion's expression changed. He was pleasantly surprised. "Grandfather, what is going on?" Nie Dao let out a deep breath and said, "After you left, I was worried that Nangong Jueming would go back on his word and attack the Nie family. After all, he had already gone back on his word once, which led to the tragedy of Benevolent Light City. In order to prevent the tragedy from happening again, I once again opened the ancestral land and let all the Nie family members enter. After doing this, I was still worried, so I let your uncles seal the ancestral land with their own bloodlines to prevent Nangong Jueming from forcefully entering. When Nangong Jueming made his move, although he guessed that I would hide the Nie family members in the ancestral land, he did not expect that I would seal the ancestral land with the bloodlines of Filiu and the others. So even though he was angry, he could not kill the Nie family members." After saying this, Nie Dao revealed a smile, as if he was very happy with his wise decision. If he did not let the Nie family members enter the ancestral land, the Nie family would not have escaped the fate of being exterminated. "So that's how it is." Hearing Nie Dao's words, Nie Tian faintly smiled. He finally understood why Nangong Jueming was so cruel as to hang Nie Dao and the others on the stone pillars and cruelly torture them. "Grandfather, can you open the ancestral land now?" Nodding his head, Nie Tian raised his head to look at Nie Dao and asked. "I can't." Nie Dao shook his head. A worried expression immediately appeared on his face as he said, "The ancestral land was sealed by your uncles using their bloodline power. Only their bloodline power can open the ancestral land. But now, Filiu and the others' origin meridians have been destroyed. Not to mention opening the ancestral land, even surviving is a problem." This. Nie Tian was stunned, his expression extremely unsightly. He did not expect that the Nie family's ancestral land would be sealed by Nie Filiu and the others using their bloodline power. And now, Nie Filiu and the others' origin meridians had been destroyed. They were already crippled and could not break the bloodline seal. Chapter 2859. For conditions. Nie Tian fell silent after hearing Nie Dao's words. He wanted to enter the ancestral grounds and see how Mo Rushi was doing. But there was no way to open the ancestral grounds now. He could not forcefully open the ancestral grounds with his strength, and even if he had the strength, he would not dare to do so. If he forcefully broke the bloodline seal, he might destroy the entire ancestral grounds. The only way right now was to let Nie Tian's uncles, Nie Filiu, and Nie Feiyu recover their strength before opening the ancestral grounds. However, Nie Filiu, and the others' Yuan meridians were completely destroyed. It would be extremely difficult to even restore their Yuan meridians, let alone recover their strength. Nie Tian would naturally think of a way to help Nie Filiu and the others recover, but he was worried that their bodies were too weak and would not be able to wait until that day. After a cultivator's Yuan meridians were destroyed, they were equivalent to an ordinary person with a lifespan of 100 years at most. Even if Nie Filiu and the others were only youths, they would only have a few decades of lifespan under the most ideal circumstances. Nie Tian was most worried about Nie Dao. The latter was already old and could die at any time with his Yuan meridians destroyed. Nie Tian, everyone has their own fate. Life and death are in the hands of the heavens. You do not need to worry about us. Nie Dao knew what Nie Tian was thinking. He laughed brightly and said, "Although the people in the ancestral grounds are sealed, they are very safe. When your strength increases in the future, you will naturally find a way to open the ancestral grounds." Nie Tian frowned slightly when he heard Nie Dao's words and said heavily, "Grandfather, don't worry, I will definitely help you recover." Nie Tian, I am very happy that you have such intentions. Nie Dao smiled slightly, but it was a little bitter. Nie Tian's gaze focused slightly and did not say anything else. Next, he had everyone temporarily settle down in the Wind and Cloud Alliance. He would personally guard this place. Nie Tian. At this moment, a voice rang out from outside the main hall. A figure then appeared at the entrance of the main hall. Lian Jiufeng. Nie Tian frowned when he saw the figure and his expression darkened slightly. He hadn't thought that Lian Jiufeng and the others would still be here. What do you want? Lian Jiufeng's figure landed outside the hall and looked Lian Jiufeng with a cold gaze. You must be present for the Nether Emperor's revival, Lian Jiufeng said gravely. Face cold, Nie Tian said with a plain tone, I've fulfilled all of your demands. If the Netherworld Emperor still can't be resurrected, it's none of my business. He had already made a deal with the ancient underworld. But now, Lian Jiufeng and the others had brought up another condition, and at a time like this no less. How could he not be angry? Nie Tian, what if we can help your family and friends recover their yuan veins? Lian Jiufeng frowned and looked at Nie Tian with burning eyes. Nie Tian's expression changed. His eyes trembled as he asked, Are you serious? Of course. Lian Jiufeng nodded. As long as you help us revive the Nether Emperor, it won't be difficult for the Nether Emperor to heal their yuan veins. Nie Tian's gaze darkened when he heard Lian Jiufeng's words. So Lian Jiufeng wanted him to help the ancient Ming revive the Nether Emperor first, and then the Nether Emperor would heal Nie Dao and the others' yuan veins. Originally, Nie Tian could accept such a condition. But he had to guarantee that the Nether Emperor would heal Nie Dao and the others' yuan veins after he was revived. Lian Jiufeng and the others were the Nether Emperor's subordinate. Even if they made a promise, it didn't represent the Nether Emperor's will. If the Nether Emperor was unwilling to save them after he was revived, wouldn't all this be for nothing? More importantly, the Nether Emperor had once wanted to devour the 9 regions. If he still desired the 9 regions after he was revived, then wouldn't Nie Tian's actions put the 9 regions in danger? Nie Tian frowned slightly when he thought of this. He asked, Lian Jiufeng, if I help you revive the Nether Emperor, what guarantee do you have that the Nether Emperor will fulfill my conditions? My life. Lian Jiufeng frowned and took a step forward. He said heavily. Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He stared at Lian Jiufeng for a long time before he said, I can revive the Nether Emperor, but my conditions are not so simple. What conditions do you have? Tell me. Lian Jiufeng's eyes were dark as he said loudly. The ancient Ming had planned for hundreds of thousands of years to revive the Nether Emperor. He would agree to any conditions Nie Tian made, no matter how harsh they were. Nie Tian nodded and said, First, after the Nether Emperor is revived, he must help my family and friends recover their yuan veins. Second, after the Nether Emperor is revived, he must not covet the 9 regions. Third, the Nether Emperor must help Cher recover her memories. Fourth, after Cher recovers her memories, she can decide where she wants to go and who she wants to follow. The Nether Emperor is not to interfere. Nie Tian's eyes flashed when he was finished. He said, Not a single one of these conditions can be omitted. Lian Jiufeng frowned. He looked terrible. He hadn't thought that Nie Tian's conditions would be so harsh. The first and second conditions were acceptable, but the third and fourth conditions were very troublesome. As one of the 3 bodies of the heaven-punishing devil heart, Lian Jiufeng naturally knew how important the kindness body of Cher was to the heaven-punishing devil heart. Without the kindness body, the heaven-punishing devil heart of the Nether Emperor would be incomplete. An incomplete heaven-punishing devil heart would greatly weaken the Nether Emperor's power. It looks like my conditions have made you hesitate. Forget it. Nie Tian looked at Lian Jiufeng and smiled faintly. He said, I have a way to recover their yuan veins, and even if the Nether Emperor does not revive, I have a way to protect Cher's life. Lian Jiufeng frowned, and his expression became even uglier. He believed Nie Tian's words. After all, the latter had been to the Sacred Soul region before. Moreover, when Nie Tian took out the Heavenly Law Sacred Heart, he saw with his own eyes that the Heavenly Law Sacred Heart's aura was somewhat similar to the tear of the princess. The two seemed to resonate in some way. If the Nether Emperor does not revive, The heavenly law sacred heart's power is enough to protect Cher's life. Are you still hesitating? Nie Tian looked at Lai Yin Jiufeng and smiled. Then, he moved and prepared to leave. Nie Tian, I agree to your 4 conditions on behalf of the Nether Emperor. It was at this moment another voice sounded, and a figure appeared. It was the killing body, 7 kills. 7 kills you. Lai Yin Jiufeng abruptly turned around. His fiery red face froze when he saw 7 kills appear out of nowhere. Lai Yin, we have no other choice. 7 kills' eyes flashed. He said solemnly, I believe that if the Nether Emperor were here, he would make the same choice. Alright, let's do it. Lai Yin Jiufeng's eyes flashed, but he still nodded in the end. Very good. Seeing that the two had agreed, Nie Tian's lips curled into a strange smile. Then, he flipped his hand, and a white ball of light appeared in his palm. It was the heart of the heavenly law. Lai Yin Jiufeng and 7 kills were stunned at the same time. They asked, What are you planning to do?